Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Ha ha ha! What is up? Yeah. Smile on my face. You know that's right. Wow, is it Wednesday? Fade to Black. Had a big scare before the show today. About 10 minutes in, TweetDeck didn't open. It just sat there with its twirling screen. Panic. How's everybody doing? This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday. It's June 25th. We are 165 days into the new year. As always, we are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in sunny, roasting, hot, sweaty Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your host, Jimmy Church, and let's get this one cracking. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform getting ready to heat it up again. Fighting the good fight for us all around the world. Whoever you are, we salute you. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you could not hear me right now. Or tweet. How you doing? Man, it's good to be back. It's so strange. 3 days off. Well, we're working here, but it just goes on, and I just can't wait for Wednesday to roll around, and here it is. It's going to be a great show. Somebody posted, it was a newbie, somebody fresh to the show had posted on YouTube. Oh, man, 15 minutes in, and all I've heard is how great this show was going to be. I was like, what? Well, he's never been here before. My response was, and I don't do it often, but I actually said, and what do you think of the rest of the show? The other 2 hours and 45 minutes. Action-packed. All right. How is everybody? Everybody relaxed and ready to go? I'm looking over at Twitter here. Email's already starting to stack up. Got the usual cast of characters. Kevin O'Quinn is in the house. What's up, Kevin? All right, let's go. Bespoke radio for the masses. It's all about you. It's been a humbling experience this last week with all of that, the ABC News and the Huffington Post, and over the weekend, Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero contacted us, and we went on Ground Zero, his show, for a couple of hours on Monday night, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's coming up this week too as well, just like that. And it's fantastic. And just getting this Malibu story out into the mainstream like that is great, because it just never happens in ufology. We're just stuck to our own little circle of friends, and we talk amongst ourselves. But to have mainstream media today, I mean, it's all over, which is cool. But people are sending me links from around the country, from different radio stations and TV stations where, and I've gotten email from people I haven't talked to in 30, 40 years. So it's out there, and it's great. and the word is out. Okay, Dale, I see it. What? All right. We've got a lot to do tonight. We've got James Swagger is going to be in here, megalithic researcher, radio host guy, who's, in my opinion, and I said this to him earlier today, he's got the life I'd love to live, just cruising around, checking out rocks and talking about it. James Swagger, he lives the life. That's the life of Riley right there. So we've got James Swagger on tonight. Tomorrow night, Carrie Cassidy will be in to discuss everything that she's been up to. She just got back from Europe and Malta. We'll be talking with her about that tomorrow night and all of the other breaking stuff that is going on. And so she'll be in. But she's going to be live here at the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank. She will be live with us, which means pizza and beer. We're going to get Carrie drunk tomorrow night on the air. And then she'll start to really talk. That's a scary thought. So, yeah, excited about that. Carrie in here tomorrow night. And Friday, live from Rome, Italy, Patricia Corey will be in. And she is, she's a researcher and an author. Now a screenwriter, too. A major studio has picked up her last book. And it just happens to be, well, her research is all about that stuff under the water. All that black government, black project, secret base world. And she's going to be in Friday, live from Rome. She lives in Rome. How cool is that? Not Rome, Georgia, or Rome, Alaska, or is that Nome, Alaska? No, Rome, Italy. Not too far from the Colosseum. And so that's going to be great. So that's Friday. All right. And next week, we're all booked up. But one of the cool things is we are going to have a very special July 4th show on Friday. We debated on, whether to do a replay, which we could have done, taking the night off, watch the fireworks, hung out with the family, or hang out with the Fade to Black family. It wasn't even a coin toss. It wasn't even a decision. We just decided to go live. So we have a very special Friday program set up next week with the one and only Adam Go Riley. Will be right here. Now, that's one you're going to have to buckle up, phone the neighbors, wake the kids, make sure everybody is safe. But that's going to be a great show next Friday. And, okay, so with that, let's get this one cracking. We got a lot to do today. We got a lot to get in. Oh, man. Our dead guy birthday today is George Orwell, who wrote 1984. He was born today in 1903, died in 1950 at the age of 46. Can you believe that? Changed the world, changed a generation. Somebody that we speak about every big brother, man. We talk about it every single day. Well, that's the man. George Orwell died from complications at the age of 46 from tuberculosis. Spent the last couple of years of his life in a hospital bed, really, especially the last year, and people just coming in trying to just take his stuff. And it was pretty wild how it all went down. But, yeah, he died the 21st of January, 1950, age of 46. And his gravestone, I went and checked this out today myself, saw the picture of it. His gravestone says, "Here lies Eric Arthur Blair. Born 25th of June, 1903, died 21st of January, 1950. End of epitaph. There is no mention on the gravestone of who he really was or what he did for society and us and me and you. The plainest gravestone you've ever seen. Unbelievable. George Orwell, 46 years old. And I normally don't go on like that, but he's a guy that we all reference every day. And just have a gravestone like that and go out at the age of 46 and have your family fight over your money and everything else, it would just wasn't right. And it just made, he was right in the end. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, @JChurchRadio right now. Hashtag DM Radio Net. Go hang out with everybody. Like I said, everybody's there. What do you think on the crackheads? Everybody's there at J Church Radio. Go do it. Hashtag DM Radio Net. I use TweetDeck here. TweetDeck is great. Twitter product. So a Jack product. TweetDeck works really well if you want to do anything like that. Facebook is jimmychurchradio.com. Go over to the fan page. That's what we update first. YouTube. If you missed the show tonight, tomorrow night, missed the replay, we get everything posted up on YouTube. And we're working on the website, too, by the way. So, you can send emails about it. I stopped reading them. We're a little backed up on that website. But anyway, the website is still where we break all the news. Okay? So go follow, like, and subscribe. Tonight, like I said, it is James Swagger. Email throughout the show. I was going to give away some stuff tonight. We got some really cool things that we received here that I want to give away. I'm going to wait until tomorrow night, and we'll talk about that. But anyway, so tomorrow night, but I got some really cool things we're going to be giving away. Contact in the Desert contest over at jimmychurchradio.com. I am clicking on it now. Just go, scroll down. There is the Contact in the Desert banner. It's a poster. Click on it. Oh, one of Lynn asked me for an autograph poster. I'm going to get that. I don't even think my name's on it, but I'll sign it for you. Contact in the Desert. Click on that. Go over. It takes you to the Fade to Black page. Register and win. We will be broadcasting August 8th live from Contact in the Desert in Joshua Tree. All of the winners will come on the air if you dare and come and hang out with us. Sukalos, Stephen Greer, David Wilcock, Eric Van Daniken. I always want to say Van Daniken. It's Von Daniken. Michael Tellinger, Jim Mars, Nick Pope, John Anthony West, Jason Martell, David Jacobs, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, James Gilliland. Laura Eisenhower is going to be walking around there. Jesse Marcel, Marshall Klarfeld, Alejandro's going to be there, Donald Schmidt, Colonel Robert Salas is going to be there, Lynn Kate, we're going to have her on the show next week, actually. Everybody, Stephen Bassett is going to be there. Nick Redfern, Mike Barra, Travis Walton. I'm telling you, go and register. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com, click and register. Get it done and win. Come on and hang out with us. All right, so that backs that up. I've got that done. Church Rant tonight is there's just scroll down. There's Church Rant. Got to get this in. I got to get to a break. Church Rant is LaGrange. Newgrange. LaGrange is ZZ Top. Newgrange. It's one of the coolest pictures you're ever going to see. We're going to be talking about this tonight. So I'm warming you up. That picture that you're looking at, that building right there, that's older than the pyramids in Giza. That is older than Stonehenge. Take a good look at that. And you've probably heard of Newgrange. Tonight, I'm going to run it in the ground. Still, to me, it's like one of my top 3 places in the world. Absolutely a phenomenal place. So Newgrange, right there. It's under Church Rant, and you can click on that. We've got a bunch of updating stuff that we're going to be talking about also a little bit later in the show. On the Malibu deep underwater base, got a couple of announcements that may be a little premature, but we've got some action going on there. I will say this. Tonight, I am drinking out of my Lynn Lewis Elvis cup, my Elvis coffee mug. Thank you, Lynn. You have no idea. It is really cool. Now, before I head to the break, I'm going to say this really quick as I roll the break. Donations have been coming in. All of the donations that anybody sends in will be used exclusively, every penny, for the Deep Underwater Base documentary that we will be shooting later on this month. I'll use every penny for the editing of this documentary. Anybody that donates your name is going to go on the credits for the documentary. So check that out. So if that's what you want to do, the donations, everything that's coming in, you've never even heard me mention this before because I don't ask for it. But if you want to get in, we will take those donations. But they're going to be used for the documentary. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Don't touch that mouse. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Virus database
Come in.
has been updated.
Rita. Did I leave my mic on? Didn't kill the mic. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. At JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. You can also email Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. I left my mic open during the commercial break. Isn't that great? And the phone is ringing. I'm looking at caller ID. On the air with us right now, Jason Martell. Jason, are you with us, sir?
Hey, Jimmy, how's it going?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking me to come on the show.
Well, and thank you for breaking into, a very busy schedule. The thing is about you, Jason, you're on you're like your 10th season of the most successful program on cable. You're a good-looking guy. You're a smart guy. You're a teacher. You're a researcher. It must be good to be Jason Martell these days.
Hey, man, thank you. Well, that's very nice of you to say that. And, yes, I'm very grateful to get to do what I do. And every day's a gift, my friend.
It is, isn't it? It's humbling sometimes.
So, yes, there's some interesting things going on as usual. And thank you for plugging Ancient Aliens. I will say I'm shooting for a new episode of Season 7 on Saturday. So, yes, it does continue to evolve. I guess we'll see where it goes.
It's going to end up being like MASH. You guys are going to do like 13 seasons, and then there's going to be this huge final night, one night where, all of America is sad and everybody is depressed. But
we all get abducted or something, right?
Yeah, right. So, the breaking news, obviously, and I'm sure that you guys have been discussing it in your circle, is the Malibu base discovery over here. And we were talking about that earlier today. And thank you for coming on. I would just love to get your 2 cents in. We'll be doing it every night for the next couple of weeks leading up to Contact in the Desert. And we'll see you out there, by the way. We're going to broadcast live that Friday night from Joshua Tree. So we'll see you. Hopefully you'll be there that Friday.
I believe I will be, but I am there that weekend, so that's brave of you to broadcast live.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be crazy, and we're really looking forward to it. But okay, so over to the Malibu base. Well,
Sure,
let me ask you the direct and honest question. What was your initial reaction as you started to look at these images and hear the story? What was your reaction when you first laid eyes on it?
Interesting. It's the first word that popped into my head. But then the next word, of course, would be, it's probably not real, or something along those lines, more of a skeptical hold me back.
Right.
But, the way I look at it, Jimmy, and here's my 2 cents to weigh in on it is, it's Google Earth, so it's hard to articulate the actual resolution of, pixelation versus actual curvature of the Earth in some instances. But if you mix what this evidence is showing with other known facts, it does start to just kind of add to the pot of already known information that kind of points to the idea that California has been a hotbed for UFO sightings. And, the couple of points that I wanted to make to at least put some tangibility behind this being some type of, base or some type of subterranean or subsurface launching site is if we think about the defense network that we have in the United States, like NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain, and these various sites, a lot of them are underground or in reinforced bunkers underneath mountains. So we already have the technology to move large ships, even submarines, underwater craft, not just flying machines, but vast amounts of equipment can be moved in subterranean methods. And anyone can just Google Air Force drilling machine and quickly be like, wow, that existed 30 years ago.
Right.
And so we've already, made quite an extensive underground network that I'm sure have to have surface points that are all over the U.S., some of those like Area 51 or S4 and the covered garage doors, if you will. It makes sense that there might also be USO launch points. And so I just, as that is a factor, right, Jimmy, we think about some of the sightings that have happened over the years, like the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942, going back that many decades and showing that there were, a whole air raid with sirens and we were, firing off shells at what appears to be some type of large circular flying object. That was back in 1942.
Mm-hmm.
So even to this day, there's something going on from a high level where, yes, on the surface, we've had UFO reports, USO reports, all off the coast of California, all from the distance between California's coastline and the island of Catalina, which significant UFO reports have come out over the years. So it makes sense to me that there's probably some connection. And again, I am going on personal speculation here. I'm just, again, taking this off of the relevant facts that are available. There's probably some type of space command beyond NASA, and this might be one of the ports that we use from the military industrialized complex for, let's call it space, generally not known to the public, that is probably being utilized here on Earth as some type of way to enter and leave a vast complex system that is being used beyond the public's knowledge for a very advanced space command that is currently active and connecting probably many other sites beyond just Earth, we know on Mars and other places. So that's probably my 2 cents, Jimmy, from a high level.
Well, and the way you're exactly right, because with anybody else that would be hearing about this story, maybe they're listening to the radio in their car and they're hearing about this for the first time and they don't know about what's been going on between Catalina and Malibu and Marina Del Rey for the last 40, 50 years. If they don't know about the backstory to that, then they don't understand why we jump to conclusions so quickly. Not conclusions, but possibilities. So quickly.
Logical possibilities.
Yes. And the other thing is, if it's natural, that's about the craziest natural formation on planet Earth outside of like the Grand Canyon. And that would be really significant and cool in itself if it's some kind of, sub-ocean river that's connecting to tunnels that has been accessed by something else over the year, if it is natural. But I think if it's natural, it's just as significant and it's just as cool. Now, I was doing something last night, and I want to run this past you since you are the ancient alien guy.
Okay.
Well, yeah, if you know what I mean, is this? Let's just suppose that some of the theories of civilizations arriving here 80,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago from whatever planetary system or solar system, and arriving here and being the launching pad to the other civilizations that popped up immediately after that, Sumeria or Egypt or Greece for that matter. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But let's just suppose then you're looking at, if you look through those glasses at this structure, then it kind of makes sense in an architectural sense, doesn't it?
That's a great point, Jimmy. You're right. There's enough evidence all over the surface that have captured our imagination, and we realize that these monuments are built with architecture and techniques that are beyond what we propose to be ancient man. So a lot of the sites we're now finding, like Yonaguni off of Japan or Dwarka off of India, are underwater. And it's very likely that this could be some ancient connected site to what you're talking about, these megaliths all around the world.
And also the complex that's off the coast of Cuba, and that's underwater about the same depth as this. This being 1,400 feet to the top of the plateau itself. There's one thing you had brought up, and I want to bounce this off of you too as well. You look at enough photographic evidence all day long, and people are submitting stuff to you, and you're doing your research. If it was, let's say, a 50-foot anomaly or mistake or glitch or pixelization in Google Earth, that's one thing. But this is a 2.5 mile by 1.5 mile anomaly that is also, over 1,000 feet tall with a 500-foot thick roof. Mm-hmm. That's kind of large for a mistake, isn't it?
It is, Jimmy, but let me put it into context for you from other satellite telemetry that we gather off planet. If we look at the face on Mars and how that image or that structure, that is a 1,500-foot face in height and 1 mile at its longest point on the side of the face. So similar in size, very large object. But as we've seen over the years, the resolution, even though our technology is amazing, we've had and struggled with imaging the face correctly and getting clear data. So it's very possible that again, satellites that we are deploying and using for Google Earth might have a certain level of resolution. But I'm sure that there's other things capturing this area. And as an example, even more layman tools available to us, like you could literally petition NASA for this. They have something called synthetic aperture radar. It's a huge 747 packed with ground-penetrating radar. They flew it over Cambodia and found pyramids buried by jungle, but they were just slightly underground as well. I bet you if we flew NASA's synthetic aperture radar over this and got some ground-penetrating radar, we might be able to see that there's a tunneling system that's connecting underwater and also onto the land, but underground.
Could you imagine
synthetic aperture radar? Yeah.
Could you imagine how earth-shattering that would be? If we thought that Göbekli Tepe was a big deal, could you just imagine? And I think we're on the brink of that now too. We're going to head out there with a boat in a couple of weeks. We're going to drop some ROVs down. The ROVs have to go 2,000 feet, 1,400, 1,500, 2,000 feet under the water. It's not just an everyday scuba trip. It's a real deal.
Well, let me know if you need any help with that. We've got the Ancient Explorers Foundation, ancientexplorers.com, and we're doing similar things, utilizing drone technology, aerial, and ground-penetrating radar, but nothing submersible. So maybe that's another off-air topic. But hey, that's great that you're actually going on site.
Well, we have to. Now the proof is in the pudding. We've done all of the disclosure that we can on our end and go public with it and date it. But now Now we have to take it to the next level, and we're set up and we're ready to go. But yeah, absolutely, we'll talk about this off air. Hey, thanks.
Well, that sounds exciting, Jimmy.
What have you got going on before I let you go? What are you doing? Any speaking? You're going to do some shooting this Saturday. I'm going to see you in Joshua Tree. What are you doing between this Saturday and Joshua Tree? What else have you got going on?
The other thing I'd probably mention is CPAC, which is the conference of the precession of the equinox. And CPAC is another one of those amazing conferences that's coming up, I think, just after Contact in the Desert. So I am looking forward to that event. But really, right now, I have other obligations, Jimmy, that are kind of keeping me tied down with ancient explorers that we're gearing up to do some tours and some events early next year, and a lot of these announcements are going to be made in the next upcoming months.
And we've always had your links up on the site, so if you want to go and check out when and where with Jason, also Ancient School, you didn't mention that too as well. And yeah, all of the links are up on the site, and wish you all the best. We'll talk over the weekend.
Sounds great, Jimmy. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for coming on with us, Jason. Bye-bye.
Of course.
Jason Martell. Yeah, and that's the impact of this site. It's definitely shaken up things to the core in ufology, and it is one of just exciting for all of us out here. Oh, so with that, you know what? You want me to just jump in with Swagger? I'll give 2 seconds for a tweet response. Oh, you know what? We're on a 10-second delay. By the way, I got to get used to it's a 10-second delay. All right, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. Let's bring in. Let's take a quick break. When I come back, James Swagger in the house. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Wednesday edition on the Dark Matter Radio Network. At JChurch Radio is what you want to do. Hashtag DM Radio Net. Don't touch that mouse. Back with James Swagger. 2 minutes. Stay with us.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KJCR, in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. The Wednesday edition. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DM Radio Net. Shoot me an email right now to Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Pierce the veil of those producers in there. And you can also go to the contact page if you want to do so in confidence, where we use special non-NSA encrypted servers. James Swagger, a prolific researcher, field investigator, and down-to-earth engineer, has dedicated the last 15 years of his life to researching megalithic sites and ancient cultures. James's approach is a simple use of science and engineering to peer into the past. His passionate aim is to unveil humanity's true cultural blueprint. James has been to over 400 megalithic sites and tombs dotted across Europe. In addition to stone circles and the henges in search of commonalities and design, James utilizes his engineering background as a systems analyst to the utility and reduce the complexity of ancient megalithic sites. His lifestyle is passionately filled with exploration of history. When not writing, reading, or researching, he pursues travel to the variety of ancient sites across Europe. His current areas of research are you ready? Archaeoacoustics and archaeoastronomy, and his spare time, it is astrology. His most captivating place so far has been to Machu Picchu and the Cusco Valley. He's an intellectual who loves to philosophize about our origins, explore anomalies and mysteries of all kinds. He enjoys talking about where we are now as a species and what the future holds for us. I would like to welcome warmly to the program, James Swagger. James, how are you, sir?
Oh, hey, Jimmy, it's great to be here. It's so nice when you hear your career paraphrased like that on radio. It's like, wow, that's me.
Yeah, I did all that.
I know, and it's true. You know, it's dressed up nicely with nice words, and it flows well. But that's me, and that's who I am. And it may seem all glorious, and like I said to you earlier, Jimmy, you know, it's like, you know, it's not paying very well, but it's something I love to do, and it's. I left an engineering career, Jimmy. I educated myself to a good level, a high level, and in engineering and science and mechanical engineering, and I spilled into some science. I'm an engineer first, science second, and mostly what I did was in the tail end of my career was work as a systems analyst, and I liked it, and I loved it, and for the time I was there. But I got what I wanted out of it intellectually, and that's the only reason I was there. You know, I'm very, very selfish, Jimmy. All I ever wanted to do was feed my brain. Since I was a kid, I would just feed my brain. But personally, in my spare time, it was history, and that would be the history of science and the history of engineering. But I have an engineering brain and a scientific brain, and that was just the career I chose, my early career. But now I'm at this crossroads where I have some sort of little comfortable stage in my life. I'm mid-30s, and I'm just at that stage now. I don't want to do the engineering anymore, Jimmy. And like you read out there, I am consumed by what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm traveling around. I never actually planned it to be this way. I thought I would write a book about Sumerian culture, because this is the number one for me, or Egyptians or something like that. But I ended up, I'm in megalithic territory in Ireland, and I've lived in the UK for about 13 years as well, Jimmy. So this is the terrain that I'm living in, and it was the stuff that was immediately close to me that needed research, and stuff came my way. We'll get into that, but this is the calling that I had, and for all my research and passion, I would have loved to have been doing, like an Egyptologist digging up Egypt, or, being an Assyriologist looking at a cuneiform script and deciphering stuff. But it wasn't my calling, but it's still something I look into now and research and stuff. But this is what I'm about now, history, and the history of engineering, the history of science, artifacts, high technology in ancient times, or looking at the use of astronomy in 3000 BC, because I think, 3000 BC is the time frame that I love, Jimmy. And so there's an entrance to the show, Jimmy.
Well, this is the thing. Where you live, whether it's, wherever you go over there in the UK, whether it's in Ireland, north, south, doesn't matter, head up to, if you're in Wales or Scotland or any part, you can back over and trip over really, really old things. Here, I'm in Southern California. The oldest thing I can find around here that's cool is In-N-Out Burger down the street. It's been there for 35 years. That's what we deal with here in Southern California. And actually, that isn't completely true. We do have the San Fernando Mission, which is a few hundred years old. Okay, yeah, that's a really nice place. But we can't appreciate what you are talking about. You can own a piece of property, you remember the guy that did the gold find a couple of years ago in that field, just in his buddy's backyard. And he ends up digging up. Well, it's not the amount of gold was extraordinary, but it was what it was: swords and helmets and jewelry and stuff. It just in somebody's backyard. Yeah, it really is. And you don't know if a rock in your backyard that's back there is is just a boulder, or is it something significant and thousands of years old.
I'm glad you mentioned the different regions, north, south. In Ireland, we have Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, and you also have Wales, Scotland, and England. And, when you look at the British Isles, that is the island of Britain and the island of Ireland, two islands and far to the northwest of Europe. We're kind of isolated here, and we're own little entities. And but when you look at this region, it's incredibly small compared to America in terms of landmass. But we got 60 million people living across Britain and Ireland. There's just cities every 10 miles. It's crazy. But inside, you go outside the cities, still today, most of the place, especially Ireland, is still, like it was like 5,000 years ago. It's just farming land. It's just barren, and especially Ireland. This is why a lot of this stuff is still preserved and still there. The only thing that's really some of it's come up against is just farming. Farmers have just torn down some standing stones and megalithic circles and just ripped them apart. But so we do have a lot of stuff still preserved, Jimmy. But I'm glad you mentioned the regions, because it's important. Obviously, growing up in Ireland near Newgrange, and this is why I kind of came affiliated with it. We have this sense of appreciation for this monument, and I'm glad you mentioned that before, and how this is your number, 3 monument in the world.
Absolutely. That is no joke, by the way, my opinion and affection for Newgrange.
It's an incredible structure. It's absolutely, I've been to it about, maybe 100 plus times, just on tours and stuff. And I've got another tour coming up at the end of July, a private tour. I'm looking forward to that. But the thing is, I have been to 400 megalithic mounds. I'm not talking stone circles, just the mounds themselves, similar type Newgrange structures. Now, Newgrange is well preserved. There's various ones without the roof on it, that caved in. Some are decimated, some are like, missing curbstones, and some of them have been blown apart by dynamite, believe it or not. But for the intents of purpose, I've been to 400 across Europe. Been to the Drenthe region in Holland, a high cluster of them there. And this is why the number 400 is like a roughly, they're in clusters of 30 and 40 and 50. And I could just tell you the regions I've been to, and I've been to nearly everything in a clustered region. So when you look at Ireland, and I'll give a little geographical outlay so people can get an idea. Newgrange sits in the Boyne Valley Cemetery Complex, a cemetery being ancient 5,000-year-old burial chambers. That's what they call it, cemetery complex. They seem to concentrate on this burial function, Jimmy. However, these things are like Stone Age universities, a high philosophy encoding acoustics, astronomy, expression of artistic talent, and maybe an exploration of consciousness inside these things too. We'll get into that. So this Newgrange type feature is sitting beside two other monster ones as well. One's called Noth and the other one's called Doth. Newgrange has the name, but the other ones are equally the same size, equally as impressive, different layer, different structures, different function. And, they're in their own little cluster. Within that valley, there's maybe 40 of them, Jimmy.
How old are they compared to Newgrange? Is Newgrange still the granddaddy?
Oh, I think they say Noth could be as old as 4,000
really?
BC. Yeah, and Newgrange is 3,200 BC. Some people say Doth is 3,500 BC. These three are all within 2 miles of each other, Jimmy. Showing constellations of, Pleiades and Orion and spirals and all sorts of. So you got to understand, within Newgrange, within a 2 mile radius, you have 45% of the rock art of the whole of Europe within a 2 mile radius of Newgrange.
What is really fascinating, what is really cool to do, is to go on Google Earth and go check out the Newgrange, that little complex that is there. It is so clear. From high up, Newgrange is not small. It is. You can see it from space.
Yeah, it's a monster monument. And actually, if the listeners want to go to my book webpage, newgrangecosmology.com, I actually did like what you said, a Google Earth flyover of different megalithic mounds of Ireland. So you'll be able to see Newgrange, Noth, and Doth, Carrow Keel, Loch Crew, all the different other clusters in Ireland as well. I just did a little one for the book page, and it's popular. Everybody likes to goof off that. But yeah, like, I mean, just to give you an idea, Jimmy, you know, I started the book, The Newgrange Serious Mystery. I started it with Newgrange and I finished it at Newgrange. But I was on a journey, on a crusade of all the megalithic mounds of Ireland. And I'll tell you why. I mean, there's a high percentage of art here and a high percentage of knowledge to be encoded and figured out and deciphered, because we have the art here to figure it out. Whereas some of the places in Europe have no art, Jimmy. So if you haven't got the art, well, then you don't know what these guys were really doing. We can only guess with alignments. But when you have the alignments and the artistic expression, you know, it's like a no-brainer. It's just, you got to try and just cluster these things together. And that was my systems analyst approach, was to go to all these different megalithic mounds as a systems analyst and just see the system that they did. Everything's a system to me, Jimmy. I don't care whether you're talking psychology or the human body or, you know, the plant kingdom or astrology or engineering. You know, I don't care what that system is. Everything's a system to me. You give me the data, you give me the system, you give me the parameters, and I'll look at that system and I'll see how that system works. I'll see what was going on. The more data I have, the more complex it is, the better. The more I can see that system and what was being used. And it seems to be nobody seemed to have took that approach too much. And
let's talk about that for a second. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I do, because I want to stay right here focused on this. Mm-hmm. Ireland is isolated, and when you are talking about, I mean, it's an island. So when we're talking about, you know, 3200 BC. Not 3,200 years ago, 3,200 BC. So we're talking 5,000 years ago. Now, with your engineering background, with there were no boats, I'm guessing. Did they have a way to get over to the main? Well, let me finish the question, though. So is the artwork and all of that Irish culture, is it exclusive to Ireland, or does it tend to blend over and get into the United Kingdom proper and over, you know, cross over to another island? Or is it, you know, is it indigenous and exclusive to Ireland itself?
Well, this is something I alluded to in the book. Great point, Jimmy. I'm glad you brought this up, because there are links with the Dogon, their symbology. Now, the Dogon are still living today, but they go back to at least the 14th century that we can prove, and most likely going back to origins in Egypt. There is links with their same. They have the spiral. They have concentric circles. They have the veined leaf art. They have the triple water wave, same as Egypt. You know, there's some sort of a Dogon Egypt symbology of art, and the same as Ireland. That's what the subtitle of the book was, linking passage grave cosmology with Dogon symbology, because it seems to be largely unaddressed. I also have come across, since I wrote the book, more art linking with Dogon symbology. There's another one, like a four-leaf clover, which Laird Scranton gets into a lot in his book. He calls it, he looks like a d orbital shell of a quantum physics diagram. It's another area of research, and follow the work of Laird for that by all means. But you know, there's the same art seems to be appearing in the Dogon history. So just that's the wild one. But with respect to just the megalithic monuments, you're looking at high percentage at Newgrange. But in Wales, like you mentioned, all these megalithic regions, Wales has two passage graves up on the Isle of Anglesey in basically the northwest corner of Wales in the UK, just across from Belfast and Dublin, across the other side of the water. And they have art there as well.
Similar in design to Newgrange then?
Yeah, same type of monument, same dome-shaped mound, and art inside. So no, Ireland's not the only one that has the art. It's got a high percentage of the art.
Right.
A high percentage. But you must realise too, Jimmy, even within Ireland, there's another megalithic complex called Carrowkeel. Very few people write about it. I think it's incredibly interesting because I think it's older than Newgrange. It's similar to Newgrange because they have one... there's a special light box on Newgrange, and it seems to be repeated at Carrowkeel. But Carrowkeel can be carbon dated to 3500 BC. Now, it seems to be a forerunner to Newgrange, but there's no art at Carrowkeel at all. So even within Ireland, we have a region that has lots of art and then another region that has no art. It doesn't make sense, Jimmy.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about Newgrange. Oh, for everybody, just head over to jimmychurchradio.com, scroll down, and do a quick click on Church Rant. Got a really cool picture of Newgrange. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I haven't been there. Would love to go. I'm fascinated with it. So now I'm going to ask you. These are just Jimmy Church questions for myself, and I hope everybody else enjoys the question. It is remarkably preserved. It isn't like the condition of the pyramids in Giza or other megalithic sites around the world. Newgrange looks like it was built yesterday.
It kind of was built yesterday, Jimmy.
Yeah, right.
No, I should just say for the listeners, most people wouldn't. It looks pristine on the outside because in the 1960s it got a reconstruction. When that white quartz wall is actually held up with a concrete structure. However, internally that whole mound is pristine, like the day it was made.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Now, when you first went there as a child. Was it? Did it have the tourism? Was it? Because today it's very popular. You know, mass media, the internet. It's a tourist destination. But was it not as visited 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Kind of like Stonehenge.
Well, in the 60s, the solar alignment was discovered. That they realized the sunbeam comes in and illuminates the inside of the chamber.
Right.
You know, and it's like, you know, it only happens on 17 minutes on the winter solstice, 21st of December. And it's an incredible event that this thing is still accurately aligned. You must understand, to get that sunbeam to enter a passageway and penetrate up to 60 feet and then illuminate a back chamber so accurately. I mean, that was some feat of engineering to get it to penetrate that distance. And this was only discovered in the 60s. So since the 60s, this thing has kind of, you know, come into pop culture almost.
Right,
now,
right.
Saying that, it wasn't given much attention until the 60s. Since that, you know, I was born in the 70s. So, I mean, when I was coming up, in everybody, when they're in school, gets to go to the Newgrange. It's like the thing. It's like all school. There's school kids arriving there every day, you know. So it wasn't as it was a local thing to us, you know. But nowadays, Jimmy, it is. There's 250,000 people arriving a year to go to it. They actually cannot get enough people in and out. The time now is limited. Actually, they're actually not even giving you time to look at some of the most important features inside the monument. I should say, there's a triple spiral inside the back chamber where the sunbeam enters and hits, and the triple spiral is also on the entrance stone. On the entrance stone, it's split in two. There's a line carved into it. To the left of the line is there a triple spiral, and to the right there's other symbology. So this triple spiral is incredibly important because it's outside and it's inside. The one inside is about 1/3 the life-size one on the entrance stone. Now, you know, they don't even show you this anymore because they haven't got the time. They're trying to shuffle people in and out. They just cannot take the numbers. This thing has exploded in terms of interest. So yeah, I mean, I've watched an evolution in the statistics, Jimmy. Now it's like in Ireland, the weather we have here is terrible. No matter what day of the year you go to Newgrange, no matter what the weather, how brutal it is, you will just see tour buses lining up there. You know,
I can only imagine.
See, Jimmy, it is actually really good to see for me because I love my ancient history here in Ireland. I love my monuments, and we're very proud of them. You know, we don't have much. You must realise, Jimmy. Hang on, let me just give you a statistic. The population of the whole island of Ireland, north and south, is 5 million, and 250,000 people come to visit us every year just to Newgrange. So it's like 1/10 of our population comes to see this monument.
5 million in the country.
The whole island of Ireland.
That's crazy. There's 5 million people in downtown Burbank at the mall right now. That's insane.
And
that's insane.
And not only that, Jimmy. Not only that. I mean, Dublin, the capital of the Republic of Ireland, has 1.5, maybe 2 million.
Wow, that's the graduating class in my high school.
Belfast has about 5,600,000. So within Dublin and Belfast alone, I mean, that's nearly half the population. 1.5 million actually live in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's pretty clustered in large towns and cities.
Right.
So, you know, all the rest of Ireland is pretty much empty. It's literally empty, Jimmy. They're all clustered around two major cities. And the county of Dublin is like only 26 miles wide by 32 miles long. It's the third smallest county with 2 million people in it. So it's even tightly packed into one little corner. You must realize this.
And how much of it does Bono own? Okay, that was a bad joke. That was a bad joke.
Doug, I hate the guy. Everybody in Ireland hates Bono. He's such an obnoxious guy. He really is. We don't like him at all here.
He's okay. He's okay. I've worked for him for a couple of years.
We don't like what he markets us like. He markets us like, like where it's his property. That he pisses Irish people off. But,
well, when you got money. So anyway, back to Newgrange. The thing that's fascinating. Well, there's 100 things that are fascinating about Newgrange, but the one thing that I think everybody needs to digest with this is it is not only with the alignment of the stars, but it's the construction of the rooms on the inside. It's the delicate construction, the way that it's built. It's built with a purpose and in a spot. But it's back when, when we talk about Giza like this too as well, it's back when man wasn't supposed to have brains yet. And so how do you put that together when you look at this? How did they manage to get this done? Because it's about as extraordinary as anything else on planet Earth.
When I had left and gone to England for work and education, I educated myself mostly in England. And in my 12 years absence, I had rejuvenated another interest in history and the history of engineering from a scientific or academic background. And I came back with a physics with astronomy degree. I've never used it. It's an academic degree. And I did it to do a master's in research science and society. So I have to have a good science degree in physics, what I wanted to do. So, like I say, I'm an engineer first and a scientist second. However, I come back with this newfound skill set and, growing up at Hancock and Boval in the 90s. And, I'm into archaeoastronomy since I was in an armchair archaeoastronomy, if you want to call it that. And I jumped out of the armchair one day and I found myself back in Ireland doing it. And nobody really seems to have embraced archaeoastronomy in proper research. A couple of people actually literally concentrate on Newgrange alone, Jimmy. And they flock to Newgrange and forget about the rest. And this is the difference you must understand, Jimmy. If I'm going to realize anything about a megalithic culture, stroke civilization, you must look at all the data. You must look at all the individual sites. Because in looking at all those sites, you're going to see commonalities and you're going to see differences. And in that, you will have a realization of what the hell is going on. And what I realized was that everybody's going to Newgrange. Everybody's going to Stonehenge in England. And they're going to crack the civilization by looking at one thing. That's like going to New York, looking at the Empire State Building and professing to know everything about America.
Right.
And it's just not right, you know. And I was a bit upset over this. I went, well, I'll do something about it. I started going around and I had a bit of serendipity, and this is a beautiful story. I love to tell this. I got a book from America, a rare book. It cost me $150. I didn't even have the money at the time, Jimmy. I was up against it, like struggling to eat, and I'm buying a $150 book because it's like the archaeoastronomy Bible. It's called Hamlet's Mill. Hancock would talk about it. Walter Cutner would talk about it. You know, all these guys, you know, they're all talking about this as the starting point for anybody into archaeoastronomy. And I'm like, okay, I'll get a copy. And the only copy I could get was from America. And all this book comes from America, and it pops out a photocopied article from the New Scientist magazine stuck in the back of it from 1976, the year and the month I was born. And it's got megalithic observatories in it. And it's got a place in Donegal at the very top of Ireland where I'm living. And I'm like, wow, this is just down the road from me. Let's go and check this place out. And it's got this rock art. And Jimmy, I went there. And in 2007, I'm deciphering rock art that nobody has even embraced before. Can you believe that, Jimmy? In 2007, nobody has took on this rock art and analysed it in terms of archaeoastronomy. The only reference I ever found of it was erroneous. You know, and anybody that looks at the image of this stone, they will see the constellations of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And they're drawn in such a way with a notch in the top of the stone that they flip every 6 months on the spring and the autumn equinox. And that's why I call it the Ardmore Equinox stone. And I couldn't believe this, Jimmy, that I'm applying archaeoastronomy in 2007 to a place in Ireland that nobody has addressed. And there is reasons for that. Like I say, the sparsely populated remote regions, everybody flocks to Newgrange. Not everybody's an archaeoastronomer that goes up to this place in Donegal. Not everybody's an engineer. Not everybody's a scientist. Not everybody has the interest. They go, they goof off it, and they look at it, and they go home.
Have they named it the Swagger Stone?
I wish. Yeah, I mean, this thing, I couldn't even find it. When I was sitting with the GPS coordinates of this thing, it's so hard to find some of these things. I mean, they're not signposted. They're just in a field, in a farmer's field in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
No access road or nothing. I mean, you got farmers chasing you and everything like. So, I mean, I at that point, I realized I'm onto something here and nobody's really addressed it. I said, what other stuff is unaddressed here? I said, you know what? I'll take the island of Ireland and I'll look at this because I knew we have a high percentage of art compared to the other megalithic regions of Scotland, Wales, England. Brittany's got a high, I must say, Brittany, there's a passage grave very like Newgrange called Gavrinis on Goats Island. It's actually more decorated than Newgrange. Internally, it's the most decorated passage grave we have. Nearly every slab of wall, it's showing complex mathematics and, wave patterns intermingling with each other, So it's not like we're the only region, but there is other little clusters that have some of this rock art too. But when you go to the Drenthe region in Holland, all's left is like the passageways, monster stones, no art, nothing. So I said, look, start in Ireland, look for more art, see if there's anything else to decipher. I didn't find anything else in terms of deciphering rock art. However, what I did find was in the Carrow-Keele complex, a cluster of these megalithic mounds at a height of 100 feet in this mountain range called the Brickleaf Mountains. I found that they were all facing almost due north. The passageways were in an almost due north alignment. And I'm like, whoa, the sun or the moon doesn't get that far north. So the sun and the moon is not entering the passageway. And I just, I went, well, let's get the accurate alignments. And this is the beauty of what we have. And this is, I'm going to explain to you quite simply, Jimmy. Anybody can do what I do. You go to these passage graves. The passageway is obviously a long, narrow passageway. It's got an alignment. You take your compass out. You measure what the alignment is. You put it into an astronomy program and you see what it's aligned to at the date it was constructed. It's not rocket science. It's actually just measurable, quantifiable stuff that you can go today and do. Now, here's the thing. If it's aligned to the sun, well, then the sun, it's coming in on a special day at a special angle. So we have these angles. So we have summer solstice, winter solstice, spring and autumn equinox. You have a sunrise alignment and a sunset alignment. And these give you these 8 points of the year, this 8-spoked solar wheel, as it's called.
Is that your standard checklist with each site? I mean, bang, bang,
exactly.
bang, bang. Okay.
Exactly. It's a standard checklist, Jimmy, quite rightly pointed out. A standard checklist. Now, here's the thing. This is a common theme repeated at all these megalithic sites, but there's other stuff going on. And that leads you to believe, well, this is the clever part. If Newgrange is aligned to the sun and Note is aligned to spring and autumn equinox and Dote is aligned to the moon and all these different things have a sun and a moon alignment, well, they were using those sun alignments to figure out longer cycles of astronomy. And then when you look at the longer cycles of astronomy, that's how you interpret the art to back up what you're saying. It's like an evolution in a thought process that these guys actually didn't really care too much in terms of astronomically aligning the building. It was just so that they could observe the astronomy on a dedicated day, because that's what you need to do. You cannot, Jimmy, look at the stars here in January and then come back in July and look at them, because it's a different season. The stars shift over just a yearly cycle. So you need to be looking at, if you're going to look for any deeper cycles, you're going to have to, especially moon cycles, I mean, with the 18.6 year moon cycle, you're going to have to look at the same day every year, 18 years in a row. And then you're going to notice longer cycles. Now, how are you going to do that? If you're in 3200 BC and you got no digital watch or no calendar, you're going to have to pick something like a natural event, like a summer solstice, a winter solstice, a dedicated day. So this is the standard checklist of all these ancient monuments. It's like a primary function was to align it to the sun, haggle at this one day of the year so that you can do your astronomy, and then look for other stuff. And that's where you see the interpretation of the rock art. Now, when you understand that, and when you find a place like Carrow-Keele, where they're all facing north, almost like 8 degrees off due north, 10 degrees off due north, east or west, it's incredibly interesting. And when you look at the astronomy, it only leaves the stars that can enter. And when you look at the stars, this Cassiopeia constellation, actually the 5 belts, the 5 stars of this constellation all enter an individual chamber. So it's like they were tracking a constellation. And then you turn around and you say, well, how accurate is this? And when you realize that they're tracking each star of Cassiopeia at Carrow-Keele complex to within one degree of accuracy, Well, then it rock solidly tells you these guys were tracking the constellation. And if they're tracking the constellation, you got to understand why they're doing that. So they, are they trying to figure out, is the whole sky moving together, or are these stars randomly moving individually over time? And that's the clever thing. These guys were figuring things out, Jimmy, with stone and mud and earth, and just cleverly putting it all together, aligning it, and using natural events and natural phenomena and cycles to figure out deeper epochs. And that's exactly what they did. Now, here's the thing. This alludes you to the effect of precession that I get into in the book. Because precession is this, and you had Jason Martell, and they did a precession as well, and Malta, and they work closely together. And, they also go on about, and everybody who's into archaeoastronomy will tell you about precession, that this 1 degree every 72 years, the stars slip. Because it's just a natural phenomenon. This wobble in the earth, maybe a wobble in the solar system. We don't really know. So these stars are slipping over time. We're not going to know. It's going to take a human lifetime to realize we just slipped 1 degree.
Exactly. And before we get too much into precession, we need to back up a little bit, and I need you to explain what a passage mount, a passage tomb is, because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I've got a bunch of questions coming in about just that. They need an explanation. With that, this is Fade to Black Wednesday. We are with James Swagger on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Okay, I just reset. Now let's back up a step here, James. The question comes from anybody that doesn't know about Newgrange or other mounds or passage tombs and mounds in the UK and in Ireland. They naturally are assuming that this is a monument or a burial mound. Yeah. And it's not. So when you say passage, because we're going to be discussing this all night. So what exactly are we referring to?
Okay, let's get the definition. Let's build a picture. Okay, you got a mound of earth, something like about 10 meters high, 60-foot high dome of earth. Just a big giant mound of earth. It's got a curbstone going around. Usually they have a curbstone. The curbstones could be 1 or 2 tons, 10 or 11 feet in length. The curbstones at Newgrange, an example, and note are carved with a nice rock art. There's an entrance at usually the southeast or the southwest or the northeast or the northwest, one of these special days that the sun enters. The sun will enter this passageway, and the passageway is about 60 foot long, and it goes into an internal chamber, usually dotted in the center of the megalithic mound. Now, the center of the mound usually has a chamber, and inside this chamber it has a corbel vaulted ceiling. This is a generic design. There's individual variations across all the megalithic regions, but this is just the generic design. I'm particularly talking about Newgrange here. And so inside this chamber in the center, you have a corbel vaulted ceiling, rising quite high, sometimes up to 10, 20 foot, in a dome-shaped internal feature. Off the central chamber, we have, in the shape of Newgrange, we have a recess to the left, a recess to the right, and a recess at the back in this cruciform type shape, like the shape of a cross. And inside these recesses, we typically find ceremonial bowls. Now, these ceremonial bowls could weigh a ton each, Jimmy, carved in like a concave, beautifully artistically displayed, with maybe motifs on it and stuff. And inside these ceremonial bowls were found the remains of the dead, cremated outside the monument at some point in time and scattered into these ceremonial bowls as ashes. This is usually the typical function that these monuments are talked about. They're called burial chambers or burial mounds because of this. No burial really took place. It was a cremation for the dead outside, and then the cremations were brought inside as an offering. Now, this is not the only function of these monuments. I just explained the physical dimensions,
right, the physical attributes. So when you come in, it's a tunnel passageway. Yeah. When you come in off to the left and to the right, you have you call it recesses. You can almost call it a small room or
small room. Yeah,
yeah,
small
yeah.
room.
And then inside each one of these rooms are these giant carved bowls. So you have, and when I look at it, and I just it's beyond words, is what it is. To think that it's that old, that beautiful, and there's function to it. It doesn't look like anything crazy. It's just it's a ceremonial type of thing. I don't think there was any cremation there. There was no human sacrifice. There was no,
it's a ceremonial place. And here's the thing, we're only probably concentrating on one very, very small part of this, calling them burial chambers or passage tombs. They get the name passage tomb because tomb, dead, and passageway going into the tomb, so they get this label of a passage tomb. It doesn't even explain what these things are. These things, in their primary function, are astronomical observatories. Think about that 60-foot long passageway you just walked through to get to the central chamber. It's got a long passageway. It's like an optical tube, Jimmy.
Right.
That's out at the sun on the horizon on a special day. It's like a long optical natural observational tube that you would look at something on the horizon. These things utilize observational cosmology. Basically, the naked eye looking at the horizon. You're on the Earth, yeah. You have no telescope. You're looking at the sky, and you're watching that sky for patterns and cycles. And you're putting alignments on the horizon using the body of the Earth and alignments on it to map out the heavens. Very, very clever. Very, very clever, and very, very sophisticated, Jimmy.
Now, with your, let's stay on this subject really quick. Because we started to get into precession, which is if you're going to tell me now, and you might as well, if you're going to tell me you've tied in to any type of precession predating its construction time or any intention of an alignment to Orion or something like that at 10,000 years ago, and they knew about that. Were you able to tie into anything with the precession and how things are laid out with Newgrange or any other of the monuments?
Sure. Well, that's the key thing. When I call the book the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, I found this Sirius alignment with Newgrange. It wasn't the first one to come up with this, by the way. It's been in various articles and publications since, I think, 1984 in the Ulster Journal of Archaeology. There was a Sirius alignment. However, what I realized was I'm talking about a very specific reason for this Sirius alignment, and I call it the Newgrange precessional calculator. I actually think this thing was a precessional calculator. Now, what I mean by that, imagine this, Jimmy. You're sitting on any point on the Earth, and you put a row of standing stones on the horizon, and you align it to a star. Okay, 72 years later, that star, you're looking at the same day every year, obviously, yeah. And so you pick your birthday. You remember your birthday. Every birthday, you look at your stone row of alignments, and you're aligned to your star, and you're going, "Yay, it's still aligned." And 72 years later, a precession has knocked it off 1 degree. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another 72 years later, your son's sitting there and celebrating your birthday, and you're like, "Hey, look, it's off 2 degrees now." 72 years later for him. And 3 generations later, 3 lifetimes later, 200 years later, basically, something like that, you're off 3 degrees. And 3 degrees is the width of the moon on the horizon. So within 200-year time span, precession has knocked these monuments out of alignment. Now, here's the key thing. These guys are building these megalithic monuments over long periods of time, Jimmy, sometimes 1 or 2,000 years. And that's why we seem to have older sites and younger sites. So 4,000 to 3,000 BC, there's a 1,000-year building plan there. And what you see is these alignments getting knocked out. It looks like they went on to another place, picked a new locale, started a new building project and a new area of exploration. Now, when you look at Newgrange and you eliminate this as the primary function was the sunbeam coming in, then you look at it, you're looking for a secondary function because this was just to observe on a certain day. Now, their day was the 21st of December. Okay, so that was the day they were studying the astronomy. So you look for something that's happening on the 21st of December, and hey, presto, Jimmy, we have a monster find. We have the star Sirius on the horizon just after sunset, coming in and almost doing exactly the same thing as the sun. The sunbeam enters for 17 minutes once a year on the winter solstice. After sunset in 3200 BC, the star Sirius is doing almost the same thing. And this is not an unusual theme, by the way. This was going on in Egypt too.
Sure.
Star Sirius used to enter temples, like especially Dendera. They would actually rip down temples after 200 years and rebuild them and realign them to Sirius, because Sirius used to illuminate their temples at nighttime because the star is so close to us. It's so bright. It's one of the brightest stars in the night sky. Now, to find the Sirius alignment on the same day, doing the same thing as the sun, this is a no-brainer, Jimmy. However, what you must realize, it's not doing it exactly the same as the sun. It's slightly in the same position. But knowing the effect of precession is moving these stars out of alignment bit by bit, slowly over time. Eventually, given enough, another 70 to 200 years, it eventually would be exactly on the same position as the sun, doing exactly what the sun does. And then another 200 years later, it would be another 3 degrees out, and then it would move on again. So if they didn't notice it when they built Newgrange, they sure as hell noticed it like when it was in existence for about 100 years. They noticed it at some point, Jimmy. Now here's the clever thing. As it arises on the horizon, the star Sirius is represented with spirals in the Dogon, and I've shown other Dogon links as well with their symbology. And then there's 26 representations for the tri-spiral on the entrance stone. And I believe the tri-spiral was to represent the star Sirius in this alignment. And when you measure the center of the tri-spiral to the center line where the sun is, in other words, to the alignment, you get 0.45 meters, which is exactly equivalent to 1 degree of precession. In other words, 72 years later, 1 degree precession, it went from the center of the tri-spiral to the center line on the monument. This is no accident for me. This is like, another major red herring like showing up going, this is just like too coincidental. And here's the funny thing. My theory of the tri-spiral is the only one to explain why the tri-spiral is inside the monument as well as outside the monument. There's at present, there's like 26 theories for what the tri-spiral is. And I believe mine is like, it's a good contender. I by all means look at the other ones, but I call it the Newgrange precessional calculator. It's a very crude one, Jimmy. It's a very crude precessional calculator. In other words, this measurement on the stone is equal to 1 degree of precession. Was it a symbolic teaching mechanism to show precession and give it a measurable quantity? Maybe I think these guys knew exactly what precession was. And when you go to Carrowkeel and you see them tracking the whole of Cassiopeia, it tells you that they were aware of precession, or they were trying to find out, was the whole sky moving in one, because if you're 3500 BC, how do you know, the whole sky moves together, or is it just randomly stars moving around in time? Or, I think they were tracking precession, or at least aware of it and trying to explore what it was. There's evidence for this at Doth as well, that they used the Pleiades to track precession. So it seems to be a common theme that it was a secondary function. It seemed to be, there was known measurements and known data, and then there was always an area of research going on at these. They were like Stonehenge universities, Jimmy.
Well, if you think about it, the sky, and especially the night sky, that was their television set. That was their entertainment. That's what they said. We look at computer monitors every day. We look at our 72-inch television, and we're watching the World Cup. 3,000 years ago, your entertainment was going out at night and staring at the sky. Can you imagine, without the pollution and without the city lights and the light pollution that we have, looking up at the night sky? That was full color 3D amazement. And so absolutely they knew about precession. They knew everything about what was going on because that's all they had. And they're looking up all day long. Now, you're right. It was the son, the grandson, the great-grandson. The knowledge was carried on and marked. But, yeah, absolutely. Did they know about precession? Sure they did. That's not a coincidence that Sirius is popping up in the I don't know, what would you call that? The astral window at Newgrange? What do you call
The thing is, Jimmy, it doesn't really matter when it happened. I mean, it doesn't matter exactly what year or what day it happened. I mean, if you were aligning something like Newgrange so accurately, you were a site surveyor. You were doing construction engineering and being a site surveyor looking at a point on the horizon. You would have known when your day's work was over that the star Sirius is popping up doing the same thing.
Right.
It would have been no brainer. I mean, it's a largely ignored fact. And it's been largely ignored because the archaeologists don't embrace astronomy. It's left up to archaeoastronomers. Now, here's the thing, Jimmy. Precession is probably a bit of a jump from the sun beam entering. It's not a complex idea to bring a sunbeam in. It's complex in mapping it out and getting it to happen, in terms of physicality. But it's not a complex idea to align a chamber to the sunbeam on the horizon. You just find out what day of the year that the summer solstice is. If you want to know how to practically do that, Jimmy, You look at the sunrise all the way through the year. You'll see it rise in the northeast and on the summer solstice and set in the southwest on the winter solstice. And you'll see those extremes. You will get a point on the horizon on the far left and the far right. Spring and autumn equinox that rises in the middle of those 2 points. So you'll have three markers, one to the left, one in the middle, and one on the right, a line on the horizon. It's easy enough, given enough observations over 20 years to do this. However, there's a physicality in doing it. So it's not rocket science, but the rocket science is, as we say, using that day then and that skill set to map out another skill set. Another one is the complexity of the moon that these guys had. When you go 2 miles to the left of Noth Passage Grave, Noth is incredibly, incredibly sophisticated. They say that the Newgrange complex is the most complex megalithic site in the world.
No doubt.
And when you look at Noth from the air, Noth has the passageways. There's 2 passageways in Noth. One's on the eastern side and one's on the western side. Something like 40 meters long, something like 120 feet long passages. The longest of any passageway in Europe of all these megalithic mounds. They're almost touching in the middle, but they're not. They don't. They have one on the east. They don't quite reach the middle. And it's got something like 18 satellite mounds of various sizes dotted around the main mound. It's a monster. It's incredibly interesting to look on Google Earth. And
I'm looking at Twitter right now, and this is and don't get angry, but this is my view, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about Newgrange straight out. The reaction, and we have a very smart audience here, but wow, I've never heard of Newgrange. I didn't know about this. You're kidding me. And I'm looking at the pictures popping up and everybody looking one after another. And it's like Newgrange for everybody has been the redheaded stepchild.
It's Ireland's best kept secret, Jimmy. We keep this. We've hidden this for so long.
But yeah, exactly. And Giza and the Colosseum or Greece and Athens. We talk about this. It's in books. It's everywhere. But you and I right now are educating the masses right now, where they're fat. And you know what I'm saying? It's one of the most fascinating structures in the world. It's one of the oldest in the world. It's one of the most precise, yet gentle and beautiful. But
let me get into this. It just keeps on going, Jimmy. I mean, when you count the number of curbstones, you're ready for this now. When you count the number, the complexity keeps on going. I mean, it took me a long time to get into the art. Some of the art is astronomy based, and some of it is consciousness based. I mean, the internal design of these chambers also is to enhance acoustic effects. These guys were mostly going into some sort of an acoustic resonance chamber inside. They were aligning the astronomy coming in these chambers. So there's sophisticated acoustics, there's sophisticated astronomy. It looks like they were burying their dead in a symbolic ritual on a special day of the year, saying goodbye to their ancestors, while a beam of light was coming in. So it's incredibly precious. I mean, there's a thing called entoptic phenomena. And basically, when you go into an altered state of consciousness, Jimmy, you will see entoptic phenomena or entoptic imagery. And basically, you'll see chevrons, like a little inverted V. You'll see lozenges, spirals, concentric circles, floating circles. There's a whole list. If you just Google entoptic phenomena, you'll see a list of 40 images come up of various things. And this is the art that's encoded onto the curbstones that you can go and look at today. When I read Graham Hancock's Supernatural book and I came across entoptic phenomena, I didn't see entoptic phenomena. I seen Newgrange art. And I went, wow, is anybody addressing this? And I went, no. So when I researched and did the Newgrange Sirius mystery and did the astronomy, I was also simultaneously doing the acoustics research as well. Now,
let me jump in, James. Let me jump in really quick. A quick question from one of the listeners. Actually, I have two that address what we're talking about now. I don't want this to get away from us. How are the triple spirals related to the precession?
Okay, so the triple spiral, the sun comes up on the horizon and it hits the center of the chamber. And there's a central line. The triple spiral is just to the left of the central line. I think the triple spiral is to mark the rising of Sirius when Newgrange was built. Okay, and eventually Sirius would have migrated due to the effect of precession. And it would have migrated to exactly the same position of the sun and hit the inside of the chamber. When it did, they marked that event with a triple spiral inside.
There's your answer to that. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I'll actually have a paper on my... If you go to jamesswagger.com, you'll see the Newgrange precessional calculator theory. It's just a little paper I did to explain that one facet that I do in the book. And I did that for the Intrepid Mag feature. But yeah, it's a complex thing to explain to somebody, what these guys were doing. These guys were mathematicians. They were architects. They were engineers. They were acousticians. They were astronomers, and they were doing logistics of transporting this stuff. Let me tell you where the materials came from, Jimmy. 25 miles to the north, they brought the grey cobblestones to make when you look at Newgrange, you'll see a white quartz wall and you'll see grey lovely curved cobblestones embedded into the quartz. The grey cobblestones came from 25 miles to the north. The quartz came from 40 miles to the south. The curbstones came from 15 miles to the west in the nearest quarry. And there's something like 250,000 tons of material shipped and compiled in composite layers to make Newgrange. It's a monstrous monument just for Newgrange alone.
And now we're going to get into some of my favorite stuff, which is acoustics, and I'm fascinated with this. My career has been based on all of this, and it freaks me out that ancient civilizations like this that didn't have so many other forms of technology were so fascinated with frequencies and resonances and being able to treat a room to get reaction from it, or a building for that matter. And that gets us into this next couple of questions. You just mentioned the quartz walls. The question is, could the crystals, such as quartz, may have been used in regards to enhancing acoustic effects at the ancient sites that you have studied? Did quartz have a direct effect on what was going on in Newgrange?
Wow. Acoustically, I don't think. Energetically, yes. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have this place. I didn't write about it in the book because I had so much to get into the book on the Newgrange Sirius mystery, on the astronomy. I left the astronomy for one book and I left the acoustics for another book. I'm doing a paper at the moment on quartz at other megalithic sites, which everybody seems to ignore as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I am privileged to have got to another passage grave complex called Seafin Hill in County Wicklow. It's about 40 miles to the south of Newgrange. Very few people go here. It's at 1,800 feet above sea level. It's in a mountain range in the Wicklow Mountains. It's on a military firing range, so you cannot access the mountain unless the red flag is down. I had to go there 3 times before I got the red flag down. You don't get notified until you actually literally physically go to the place. If you can get up there that far, you'll find Seafin Hill. Very few people even go to this. But the thing is, inside that passageway, Jimmy, the walls of the passageway are lined with quartz veins. Now, let me explain. Quartz grows in the granite rock like a vein. It's like a sheet of quartz with granite on either side of it. It's like a sandwich. Granite, quartz, granite. And what they did was they bashed one side of that sandwich away to expose the quartz vein. In other words, a sheet of quartz naturally stuck to the side of the granite. And then they made them into slabs, Jimmy. And
how thick was each layer?
About an inch thick. So it's like an inch thick of quartz. It's nice, reflective, shiny quartz stuck to a quartz slab. And then the quartz slabs are maybe 4 foot tall. So they made walls of quartz dry lining, basically, naturally done. And it's an incredible amount of effort to do that, Jimmy.
It's not soft. It's not soft stone. And back then, we're talking what age? Neolithic. So what kind of tools did they even have?
Wow, I don't even get into that. I'm more interested in, they would have bashed it away with anything.
I'm going to answer it for you. They had nothing.
Let's say they bashed it away with cobblestones,
Right, right.
But when you look at that, and Seafin Hill has got an unusual alignment too, to 17 degrees east of north. And here's another weird one. That seems to be aligned to the Cygnus constellation, and they have a host of monuments across Ireland with this strange 17 degrees east of north alignment. Nobody seems to address this. It's not a solar or lunar alignment. But I think energetically, the walls of this quartz chamber called Seafin Hill was incredibly important. I think energetically they got a feel off it or a buzz off it. They would have illuminated it with quartz sunlight. Electromagnetic spectrum does change when it hits quartz. It becomes more magnetic, Jimmy. the light will hit the quartz, and electromagnetic light, for those, this not natural sunlight. I don't get too sciencey here, but electromagnetic spectrum is basically two sine waves, one 90 degrees to the other. So the light part of the sine wave is going up and down, say, yeah? Mm-hmm. And the magnetic part is 90 degrees shifted. However, when you look at it in terms of a 3D diagram, you'll see two sine waves going, opposite directions, but all coming out as sunlight. But when you pass it through quartz or hits quartz, it becomes more magnetic. It's shifting into the light is shifting into the magnetic spectrum. So you're turning light into something more magnetic, which the human body could be sensitive enough to feel. So I like to think of it like that. So, I mean, that's just one thing. I don't think acoustically that was the thing. But here's the thing. Here's another thing for the acoustics, Jimmy. You'll like this. And I like to, when you go into a church today, forgive the pun on your name, Jimmy, but when you go to church today, I mean, you'll see it laid out with like a recess to the right and a recess to the left, and the altar in the middle. And you'll see, when they burn the incense at Mass, and their choirs singing, you will see acoustic waves set up in that any type of chamber, Jimmy. Doesn't matter what we're talking about here. A rectangular room is a chamber, specific acoustics, just like a church hall or whatever. And especially in churches today, you will see acoustic waves sometimes set up. It's a natural phenomenon. It's well witnessed, well documented. You will see the acoustic waves set up when people are singing or chanting or whatever at a Mass, and the incense, because you see the smoke particles. You can actually see the sound wave. It's a visible phenomena. You can see a sound wave set up in churches. And it's basically like a square wave or an up-down zigzag. Now, here's the real thing that's going to bake your noodle. If these guys are inside something like Newgrange and it's got its own acoustic field inside, which is basically the central chamber has its own acoustic, and then the recesses have their own acoustic. It's setting up, it's like this beautiful acoustic setting. And let's say they're burning something like an incense or something like that, and they're chanting and they're drumming. And I've done drumming and testing in some of these megalithic monuments, and your mind goes to jelly, because just for those that you can go into an altered state of consciousness at about 7 hertz. If you drum and sustain a drum beat 7 times a second, 7 hertz inside these monuments, you're resonating with the natural acoustic chamber, and you go in. That's the dream state, 7 hertz, like so. It affects your brain. It literally directly affects your brain into a jelly type trance. You just walk out like jelly. You don't know where you're at. You're just kind of in a nice, happy dream state. Relaxed and calm and kind of a little transcendental. Not too heavy, but noticeable. Like, so if these guys were doing that and they had smoke or incense burning, well, they would see the acoustic waves set up inside. Perhaps this is the source of the zigzag writing that we see, these zigzag sine waves that are all across. I mean, Fornox Passage Grave, look that one up on Google, anybody. Fornox Passage Grave, just 10 miles to the south of Newgrange, zigzags all over it. Right. So this is what I talk about in Toptic art, that we can measure this stuff, and there's a natural discovery. You don't have to be like doing complex physics classes, to understand sine waves. They can actually directly observe this stuff. And I'm just giving a natural example.
Well, I want everybody to kind of relate to what you're saying. When you look at an acoustic instrument, let's take a violin or an acoustic guitar, and you look at the natural curves that are there. The front and the back have a curve. The sides have curves. That's what's going on in Newgrange and most of these other mounds. These recesses that you're referring to, and you can also talk about the curve that is in these the bowls. Everything has got a natural, organic, purpose-built form to it. And once you understand acoustics, and like you said, a church is a really good example of that, or a theater or a live place. But anyway, when you go into Newgrange, that's the vibe that you get. You look around, and there's an acoustic thing going on. I can absolutely imagine, once your response to this, your brain turning to jelly. Absolutely. Yeah. And that would be the purpose of it. Now, you got to tell me, have you ever spent the night in one of these passage?
I have at Carroll Keel, but the acoustics at Carroll Keel isn't perfect because there's a lot of backfill and spillage in there. They're open to the world. Newgrange is under lock and key 24 hours a day. It's like You know, it's like the most prized monument in the country. And then they leave other ones open to the elements to be destroyed, like literally washed away by the elements. But I had done some acoustics research a long time ago at Carroll Keel with a group of people from Nottingham. My friends came over, and we did a little research project there, and that's in the book as well, the acoustics book. But I want to mention Malta on the acoustics angle, and tie it in with Lough Crew in Ireland as well. And I'll tell you why, Jimmy. This kind of encompasses everything together. To get a grip on this acoustics, Jimmy, if you go to Lough Crew, basically, let me just give you the four main megalithic places in Ireland. You've got Newgrange complex, cluster of 40. You've got the Lough Crew hills. There's another 40 plus megalithic mounds, all on 4 hills in one location. Then you have the Carroll Keel complex, another group of 20 plus there. And then you have Carroll Moor, pretty much decimated, but I mean, still a couple of them well preserved. I do think there was an acoustics function for these and an astronomy function. When you go to Lough Crew, you can see some good visible signs of this acoustic internal design feature. Now, let me explain that. The recess there at Lough Crew Carntee, it's got an alignment to the spring and autumn equinox. So the sunbeam comes in and illuminates this solar wheel, this 8-segmented wheel, the beautiful art in the back chamber. There's the central chamber. It looks almost octagonal. It looks very octagonal. The recesses to the left, to the right, and to the back all have their own very, very, like a 4-foot miniature room built off the main off the main chamber. And these recesses don't have a doorway going into them or just a normal open entrance. You have to step over this incredibly annoying stone at your foot, which is called a floor sill. And then there's a head sill as well. So you're basically going into an aperture to go into the recess, Jimmy. Now think about a guitar with a sound hole. It's my best way of explaining this. The sound hole on a guitar, when you vibrate those strings, they vibrate the air over the hole and it resonates in the chamber inside the base of the box, the sound box of the guitar. That's how the guitar works. No rocket science there, Jimmy. But this is exactly what these recesses are like. You go through this aperture. Now, the aperture isn't perfectly made. It's not like a hole carved in stone. This floor sill is not waterproof. There's cracks in it. It doesn't serve any architectural function. It's the only thing that explains it is an acoustic design feature.
It's trapping the sound waves inside that room, and then they amplify and come out.
Yeah, it's setting up its own acoustic resonance inside each recess, and it's the only reason for it. Sometimes there's even funnels for the sound to come back out into the central chamber from the top of the recesses. Now, here's the thing. Think about the long passageway as well. As well as it being an optical tube for the astronomy, it's like a bottle. It's like a bottle with a long neck. It's setting up its own acoustic into the chamber as well. So if there is any chanting or humming going on inside, or drumming, or anything sort of an acoustic setting, it's got its own frequency because of this long passageway. It's like blowing into the neck of a bottle as such. So it's bizarre that these are multifaceted functioning monuments. It seems to be so much encoded in.
Do you think it has to? I've always thought the opposite when it comes to Newgrange and the other mounds that are around there. I just don't have the funerary aspect to it. It doesn't hit me as that. I think it has to do more with astroalignment, yes, science and some other ceremony going on. Well, there's no bones or anything that have been found around Newgrange or any other mounds, right?
Look at churches today, Jimmy. There's we go to if we got wiped out and the civilization comes and finds the earth and they go to churches. Do you think they're going to go to these churches in the graveyards and look at the graveyards and go, "This is only a place of burial"? Right. No, we're a place of worship, where people would go and pay homage and stuff like. So who knows what goes on inside a church? You cannot just profess to know everything about a monument because you found a burial there. Right. Especially when there's everything indicating otherwise. I mean, you have astronomy and acoustics, measurable quantities. I mean, I should also say, not only that, Newgrange sits in the largest natural amphitheater in the world. The whole valley is a natural amphitheater. I had a friend in there drumming an acoustic while I was outside, and I could hear the boom, 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 boom across the valley. I couldn't believe it. He got about 10 minutes to beat a drum inside. It was an incredibly rare event, by the way. But in that, I was actually annoyed that I missed it inside because I wanted to be inside for it. But I was so privileged that I was outside to hear it because I could hear it boom across the valley. I hear the natural amphitheater that Newgrange is. It was beautiful. Beautiful to hear that thing echoing around the valley. If there was an acoustic, ritual going on there, I mean, can you imagine what it was like outside to any spectators that were watching the sunbeam coming in and then the sound bouncing back out again?
And you bring up a great point. I mean, years from now, if they came, a million years from now, and they found an observatory, does that mean we're going to find bones outside of it? Or there's some? No, we used it for something else, and I think that's the same thing with Newgrange. That it was used for other purposes. I think it's very curious that the acoustic phenomena is there, and it's tied with astrological symbols too as well. Oh, I need to back up before I continue with that thought. What were the other two spirals for? You have one that was tied with Sirius. What were the other two? Were there two other star systems on the other two spirals?
No, I do think, well, funny thing is, I mean, if you want to go really out there, I mean, the triple spiral, I mean, the star Sirius is actually a triple star system, if you want to even go that far. And the Dogon have knowledge of this. Robert Temple's book, The Sirius Mystery, was actually a play on words for Robert Temple's original work, which I love Robert's original work. The Dogon, who are closely linked with the megalithic art in some strange way. I only allude to it in the book. I have a separate paper wrote on that, soon to be published. I only mention it in the book for other researchers to pick up on it. But, I just think that the triple spiral was to represent Sirius. The spirals are used in conjunction with just a double spiral as well to show the spring and autumn equinox too. And the spiral is used many times, just a single spiral, a double spiral, and a triple spiral. So that's personally what I think.
And what about the spirals in North America and the North American Indians? What do you find a connection there too as well?
Sure, Chaco Canyon, same thing, an archaeoastronomy function up there. The sun dagger, basically, I have that in my archaeoastronomy paper as well. I mentioned that, and you can see that the number of concentric rings of the spiral, the sun dagger actually basically hits exactly at the halfway point on those spirals. Again, we have a spiral even turning up in Alaska somewhere. Somebody had brought to my attention via my website. And, I find other researchers are bringing the spirals all over the world. It's one of these symbols that keeps popping up everywhere. I'm just going to give a quick mention for the website, jamesswagger.com. If anybody wants to follow my work and have a look, you'll find my links to my book pages there and articles as well. And I've got a few interesting articles coming out. Jimmy, I want to tie in Malta, and this is incredibly important. Maybe Malta.
You know what? Hey, James.
We go to Gavrinis, and now.
James, you're breaking up a little bit, so let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to reset our Skype connection, and then we'll just come back and keep on moving forward. Okay? So with that, let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are with James Swagger. Going to take a couple seconds and reset things, and we'll be back right after this. This is the Dark Matter Radio Network. Follow us at JChurch Radio. And James, I'll reset in just a second. Stand by. At JChurch Radio, hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot us an email to Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Hey, this is Alan Johannes from the Vultures and Queens of the Stone Age. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Rock on.
Yeah. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Listen to little Doug Aldrich. Bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. At JChurchRadio is Twitter. Hashtag DMRadioNet. And I am checking now. It looks like, we got a little, we might have a Skype problem right now. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to continue with the music. I got to get Skype going, everybody. We've got it's weird. It just happened really, really fast. So with that, it's resetting on its own now. Okay, so give me a couple of seconds. We'll stay right here with Doug Aldrich. Give me a couple seconds, folks. Hashtag at JChurchRadio. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Email Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Resetting with James Swagger. I'll be back right after this.
Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will, on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot us an email to Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Bespoke Radio for the masses on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We're all reset. All right, James, are you with us? James.
Back with a vengeance,
yes.
Jimmy.
Oh, man. You had to pause there just to freak me out just a little bit. All right. Now, a couple of things, James. Let's move right along. We got a lot of questions, and a couple of them. Is Sirius a triple star?
Yeah, there's Sirius A, Sirius B, Sirius C. Sirius A, the main star, the white dwarf. Sirius B, heavy and dense and white dwarf, extremely close to it. And then there's also a Sirius C. So it is the triple star system, yeah.
And when did we find that out?
You know, this is one thing I think Carl Sagan used to throw about to disparage any work that had gone into the Dogon culture. Marcel Guiraud and Jermaine Dieterlen wrote works, and they did several books, Conversations with Ogo Tameli and the Pale Fox. And when they had documented this, they documented the work of their work. Sorry, they documented their work and their research and this Dogon mythology and celestial lore of the star Sirius. And Carl Sagan reckons that, not unfounded and just basically pure guesswork, that, somebody, I think we discovered Sirius A and B in about the late 18th century with modern telescopes. And his reckoning was that this came into their culture by some modern influence. Another guy called Walter van Beek had gone to reproduce what Marcel Guiraud and Jermaine Dieterlen did with Dogon, and he couldn't. But, he had an agenda to not, find the evidence. So from what I see. However, Sirius C, the Dogon have been crying on about this as well. And, that wasn't ever addressed by Carl Sagan, because that was found out later that, these guys knew that Sirius A and Sirius B have an orbit of 50 years. They also refer to Sirius B as being heavy and white, basically a white dwarf. Now, whereas density is like incredibly dense, what a white dwarf is. And so they're able to describe physical quantities. And they're also able to describe, there was also another one called Sirius C. And they have an artifact that shows this orbital star system. So this thing is off the charts, Jimmy, off the charts.
Well, and I didn't want to put you in a defensive posture on the Dolgans and that wasn't the purpose of my question. It's more of an Irish based question where that triple spiral there could there have been any way for how did it get there? That's my point. If you have A, B, and C, we're talking about telescopes that are 100 or 200 years old today. I get that, and we could have figured it out. It would have been an enormous. Do you understand what I'm saying and where I'm going?
Let me first stipulate, I don't necessarily need to attribute that the megalithic builders knew that the triple star system was represented as a triple spiral. I'm just saying that they chose a triple spiral for the star Sirius. The fact that it is a triple star system and the fact that there are doggone links to the megalithic art, well, then that's really interesting.
Yeah, just let it go right there. Exactly. Yeah. I totally agree.
Personally, I do feel that the same people that taught the Dogon their knowledge are the same teachers that I think there was all around the globe, and ancient civilizations all talk about their knowledge being given to them. If you want to concentrate on the Dogon stuff, these guys are linked back to ancient Egypt. It's pretty much accepted in my mind here from serious researchers like Laird Scranton, and I'm doing an endorsement for Laird in his new book. This guy is prolific. He's a systems analyst for computer analyst, I should say, with systems language, similar to me in a way, but just doing it for computer only. And he looks at semantics and lexicons for computer systems, but he applies it to the Dogon complexity of their language and symbology, as with the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And he shows so many points of commonality that the Dogon are somehow linked with ancient Egypt. Now, we know that the Dogon, they have these masks that they make every 50 years to also they make these wooden masks to celebrate the Sigi festival. They celebrate this orbit of Sirius, this 50-year orbit, and they make a mask every 50 years. And these masks are made out of wood, and because wood rots and crumbles to dust eventually. And these masks are stored in a cave, and the masks are dated back until they crumble to dust, Jimmy. So if you count every mask that they have, and one was made every 50 years, well, and you can calculate how far back that culture goes. And the culture goes back as far as the wood crumbles to dust, basically the 13th or 14th century, by counting up all these 50-year masks. So we know that these guys are going back to deep antiquity, and that they're celebrating a 50-year orbit of Sirius going back to this thing, but nobody seems to concentrate on that. And basically, they say that they were given their knowledge by the Nummo, and I've had a few people on my own radio show talking about the Dogon. Very few people are able to take up this Dogon research because it's very complex. Another thing I point out is that the Sumerian culture is somehow linked with Dogon. I mean, they talk about these people, the Nummo, having bumps and nodules on their shoulders and their wrists and their tummies, on their bellies. And it's so strange that the Ubaid figurines from Ur in the Middle East, Sumerian basically region, dating to 4,200 BC. I've got some excellent photographs of these from the British Museum, Jimmy. They are showing bumps and nodules protruding on their shoulders, their wrists, and their tummy. So right there, we have an artifact in the Sumerian culture from the Ubaid period, 4,200 BC, exactly representing what the Dogon are talking about. These people, the Sumerian culture, they say we got our information from some people. It's the same people, it's in the record. It's varied, complex, convoluted, and
Well, it's not a stretch. It's absolutely not a stretch for the Dogon and the Sumerians to be connected. They're on the same continent. There's not that much space in between them. Certainly, you could have walked it at some point if you had to.
Exactly what I say in my book, Jimmy. I say that if the Dogons did march out of ancient Egypt, when they have the triple water wave, just like Egypt, just like the megalithic art of Ireland, there's something like 7 or 8 symbols. And when you march along the top of North Africa from Egypt, the Dogon route, when you're just across from Portugal and Spain, where these megalithic passage graves are in the Algarve. Also, I had a guy on my show, Peter Daughtry, talking about Atlantis and the Silver City, his new latest book. And I actually have been to the town where he lives. I didn't even see the artifact there. They have a standing stone that was pulled out of the ground at one of these megalithic passage graves. You ready for this, Jimmy? One of these burial one of these cemetery complexes for these burial chambers. Alcalar is called. There's two monuments there I've been to: Alcalar Monument 7, Alcalar Monument 9, and they got a lot of art there linked with the megalithic monuments of Scotland, believe it or not. And and the art in between doesn't seem to match up. So you have Portugal to the north of Europe, one of the biggest stretches of two megalithic mounds being somehow linked, and none of the art in between. But they also have this standing stone at the Lagos Museum with a DNA double helix embossed onto the stone. And again, that's another thing that Sumerians talk about. Mm-hmm. So these Dogons marching around the top of North Africa, it's not a big stretch to say that they had some sort of cross-cultural just across the Straits of Gibraltar. It's a stone throw, Jimmy. You know?
Yeah, it is. It truly is. Now, what about getting from Ireland down to the Straits of Gibraltar and then across North Africa?
Well, here's the thing, and let's bring in Malta for this, because two of the biggest megalithic places in Europe is Malta, the island of Malta, and Ireland. And these two places are extremely linked as well. So when you look at Malta, for example, and I'll answer that, Jimmy, in this question, Malta is actually the top of North Africa in terms of latitude. Malta is below that. It's off the coast of North Africa. It's in the Mediterranean basin. And it's so inextricably linked with Newgrange and art. It's got the spirals, got hexagons there, the same acoustics, the same megalithic internal structures and external structures. They got solstice alignments. The recesses, actually, some of the temples there and the recesses have a curved, the walls are curved inwards like an internal dome. They have a ceremonial basin at the Nidra, well, I think it's either not the Nidra, Tarjan temple. They have a ceremonial bowl there exactly the same as one in Wicklow. I have two of them in my book. If you put the two of them side by side, you couldn't tell them apart. So they have these same ceremonial basin bowls. They have the same solstices coming in the same days of the year. They have the same recesses, the same standing stones. Again, Malta's dating to 4000 BC, a little bit older.
And have you seen, there's they haven't really come to a conclusion what the bowls are for, but outside of the Temple of Karnak, those giant quartz bowls, don't they remind you of what's going on at Newgrange?
Oh, yeah, the giant quartz bowls. I mean, ceremonial function again. Use of quartz. I have no doubt we're talking about a European civilization that was traversing to and from each other. That's what I was kind of alluding to. There's so many commonalities. You must realize that the Maltese people are hands-off. These are Maltese megaliths, Maltese monuments. Get your hands off. All external insight into these are, just get away. These are our Maltese monuments.
Well, and plus, there's another thing there's a connection here that a lot of people don't really wrap their head around. But you have the Roman Giza connection, where a lot of the stones that were used in structures and monuments in Rome itself were imported from Giza. And then you have the Romans that were traversing and building roads all the way across Europe, all the way into the UK. And so you have that whole cross-cultural connection right there through Rome that goes back a long ways.
I think from 3000 BC to 0 BC, Jimmy, this stuff was so cross-cultural. We think these guys didn't know about everybody else and everything was pockets of isolation. And it's just not the case, Jimmy. There's so many examples of this not the case. I mean, especially with the megalithic civilization. And that's what I liked about my research and work, Jimmy, going to these places. I mean, I've been to Malta. I've been to the Hypogeum, this acoustic underground complex I want to mention. Again, exactly just like Loch Crew, where they have these apertures going into these rooms. It's a 3-story cave complex, the Hypogeum, a 3-story cave complex. They have megalithic carved altars in there that look like what's above the ground in Ireland in the megalithic stuff. They actually carved solid bedrock to look like standing stones and lintels, and it was just one piece of rock. It actually looked, it's reverse carved. But the acoustics in there is so perfect that when they put this special little niche in the wall, about 12 inches, about 16 inches high, about 10 inches deep, and about 12 inches wide, just like something you would put a statue into, almost like a figurine or something, like a candle or something. You know, it just looks like a little niche in the wall. But when you or chant into that niche, the whole 3-story cave complex resonates only at the male vocal range. Will not work at the female vocal range, only at the male vocal range. And it will set up a special acoustic resonance. Again, they buried the dead in there. There were 7,000 people found buried in there at the very bottom chamber.
It's kind of like the Fade to Black studios. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, at the Dark Matter Radio Network. We are talking to James Swagger. I am one of his biggest fans. I'm totally jealous about his career, but he is a megalithic researcher, author, soon to be, I want to say filmmaker. I'm sure that's right around the corner. I have a quick question for you. That this comes in from Ben, and I can't wait to hear the answer. Please ask Mr. Swagger about the legends of Pharaoh's daughter, Skoda, who migrated from ancient Egypt to Ireland and Scotland. Are there any tangible ruins to suggest that it might be true? There's a second part of the question. Let's deal with the first part first.
You know, Ralph Ellis wrote something about Queen Skoda. I haven't found enough on that evidence-wise. However, I have no doubt that the Egyptians were having. You got to understand, these guys were living at the same time as, the megalithic people. They're not that far away. Egypt to Ireland is not that far away. I mean, the Mediterranean basin, you weren't crossing open seas. You were crossing the Mediterranean basin out through the Straits of Gibraltar. You could follow the coastline from Egypt all the way around, hugging the coastline, all of Western Europe, right up to Britain. They weren't very rough seas. Like, you weren't crossing the Atlantic. You were hugging coastline all the way pretty much. Mm-hmm. It's not that big a stretch in terms of a sea journey. They talk about, Israel, the lost tribes of Israel migrating to Ireland into the west as well, and that the Tuatha De Danann, the original builders of these megalithic monuments, that they were called the Shining Ones. There's all sorts of links, that these guys were coming from either Egypt or Israel. But yeah, I mean, the Queen's Ghost, I can't find enough on it, to be honest with you, Jimmy. I will say that the Callanish Stone Temple in Scotland, which is basically like a circular monument with a cross here on it, almost like a Celtic cross as you look down from above. It's got an alignment to the Pleiades. It's got an alignment to the moon. And that Diodorus Siculus in, I think it was 30 BC, he had wrote about these people called the Hyperboreans, that they had a temple in the north. Now, I've often talked about this in previous shows, that the Hyperboreans were a black tribe. They were referred to as black people or a black tribe, and that they had a temple in the north. And we have a record from Diodorus Siculus, gone back to 30 BC, and no later than that it had, this temple of the north had an alignment to the Pleiades, that it had a 19-year lunar alignment, and that it was on an island the size of Sicily, equal to the size of Sicily. Now, here's the funny thing. When you go to the Outer Hebridean Island, which is, I'm at latitude 55 in the north of Ireland, so it must be latitude 60-something. It's right up at the very top of Scotland, very, very northern. I mean, almost bordering on the bottom of Sweden almost. I know, it's extreme northern Europe. And this is where Callanish Stone Temple is. I've been there. I've worked on the island as an engineer in the water industry. I've had the pleasure of seeing Callanish. It's a beautiful monument, but very few people see it because it's so remote, even in our modern times. However, to the west, and Philip Coppens, the late Philip Coppens, wrote about this too. Lovely researcher. I referred him in the book about this too. But basically, it's got a lunar alignment. It's on an island the size of Sicily, which is the Outer Hebridean Island. And it's also got the Pleiades alignment. And there is nowhere else at that ring of latitude, anywhere in that ring of latitude, that fills those requirements. So therefore, by a derivation of thought, that this megalithic temple, if you want to call it, must have been the Hyperborean temple of the north. So, we have this, these Hyperboreans, whoever these people were, traversing to the north, to this, to Scotland, So who these Hyperboreans were. I mean, they could have been the original black tribe of Africa, of Egypt, who also were the Dogon as well. I mean, Dogon are a black African tribe. They could have been, you know, you talk about the black pharaohs of Egypt as well. So, you know, it's murky and it's a stretch, but like that's the only thing I can really give a bit of detail. That's the only thing I find. Did this Egyptian pharaoh, was she in exile like people make out, and did she flee? I mean, I can't find anything in that. It's hard to research on it. It seems to be in a lot of popular mythology and culture.
You know, it is too. And there's one other, we started to talk about Malta, and I think we're going to have Carrie Cassidy on tomorrow night. She just got back from Malta. I have a couple of friends that are on their way to Malta right now. I've got another friend that is there right now.
Wow.
And it seems, this is my prediction, this is my crystal ball. Malta is like this next phase of discovery. And like Newgrange, it's been ignored, you know, and it sits in the middle of the Mediterranean. Everybody, it seems like no matter where you're coming from, if you're coming from the north, you're coming from the east, you're coming from the west, or from the south going up, Malta is always in your way. You know, so cultures have come and gone through Malta for forever. And
everybody's there. Everybody's been there, Jimmy.
Yeah, and so what do you Carrie is just so I can't wait to get her on to talk about. She just got back. I was watching her on a couple of television programs in Malta. She sent us the files to watch. And I was looking at some of the video that was shot there, and it just seems like Malta is one giant megalithic structure just sticking out of the ocean. Is it truly like that when you go there?
Yeah, totally. Jim, you know, I went there and, you know, I was actually traversing the island, going to megalithic place after megalithic place. I was going to the remote part of the island, looking at something for a couple of hours and just heading back to the main capital, you know. And this is how unglamorous my job is, Jimmy, because I know you glamorized it a bit there, but I do really actually just go to a megalithic place, see it, feel it, understand what's going on, and then, you know, just disappear and off I go again. I'm looking for something. I'm looking for anomalies. I'm looking for, you know, something that I can only get by going to the site. But yes, Malta is littered with stuff, you know, littered with mystery and megaliths. Ancient astronomy. I mean, the Hypogeum, I cannot emphasize the weirdest place I have ever been on this planet in terms of ancient history is the Hypogeum. This Hypogeum is basically this 3-story complex. It's if you ever do go to Malta, you will need to book a ticket 6 weeks in advance. There's good travel advice there for all your listeners, Jimmy. I actually turned up at Malta, didn't find out until I was about a week before I was going. So, you know, I turned up there knowing the chances I'd seen the Hypogeum. And it was St. Patrick's Day, and look at the Irish, it was a Sunday, it was St. Patrick's Day, and I turned up and I went, you know what, Tarjan Temple is just around the corner from it. And I went, I'll just go down and have a look. There might be, I'll spoof them away in, say I lost my ticket or something, you know, I was on my own, so I says, I'll chance my arm, and I get in, and you know what, German lady turned up, jumps out of a car, says, I've got 10 tickets, does anybody want them? I went, oh, one of them, thank you.
Wow.
It's nice in the Hypogeum. It's incredibly sophisticated, engineered place. Incredibly eerie too, but
it is eerie, isn't it? It is totally spooky, isn't it?
Spooky, but I mean, it's well done. I mean, these guys really do preserve their monuments. You know, it's well done. You're on a guided tour and you listen to it on a little dictaphone. Like, you know, you don't say anything. Nobody's even speaking to anybody. You don't even hear the tour via voice. Like, you listen to it and everybody in their own language listening to it. And you're just walking around in silence in the dark, you know. And they actually turn the lights down low to preserve any algae growing as well. So it's like so.
Oh man, I can only imagine. Seriously.
But Jimmy, when you go to that place and you get a feel for what these guys were doing in 4000 BC, this is off the charts. I mean, that somebody was putting acoustics and carving that intricate detail in the dark. You know, 3-story cave system in the dark,
right?
With no known metal implements. They reckon they only had antler picks.
You know, well, but this is the thing. This is the key, though. They did it with intention. It's done on purpose, and that's the part that is just unbelievable. This wasn't a place to escape an invading army. It wasn't built to escape the rain or weather, and that's it. It was done on purpose. A quick question: could you ask Mr. Swagger about the first people of Ireland? I seem to remember some legend that. And I'm trying to read this right. Saud said that they were the survivors of the Great Calamity, or said they were survivors of the Great Calamity, and them coming from lands and the sea.
Yeah, they come from the Western Seas. They talk about the Tuatha De Danann. It's a Gaelic Irish name for basically means people, the tribe of Danu, the people of the goddess Danu. The Tuatha De Danann. Is how you would say it in English.
Yeah, I can't read it. So yeah, that was.
We have Gaelic books going back to the 7th century. The Book of Leinster, the Book of Invasions. They refer to these. They're two separate books, slightly different variations of the same story. So it was a common mythology or history, whatever you want to call this. Back in the 7th century, these books are 7th century books wrote in Gaelic, and they refer to the Tuatha De Danann. Who later became referred to as the Dinashee, which is Gaelic Irish for the people of the mounds. So these Tuatha De Danann, these tribe of the goddess Danu, were also referred to as the people of the mounds in later references. However, these guys, it reads like a science fiction story, Jimmy. These guys either came from the Western Seas. Some accounts refer to them coming in on a dark cloud, landing on a mountain, that they were shining, and they were two types of people in the Tuatha De Danann, or the people of the mountains. They were either incredibly beautiful or incredibly ugly, and nowhere in between. And they seemed to have a shine off them. They were referred to as the shining ones as well. They had a glow off them. Incredibly bizarre accounts. It's almost reading like science fiction. They also talk about battles with the Fir Bolg and the Fomorians. Fir Bolg means fear is the Irish for men. And so there was the Numidians as well. So they were fighting with other warring tribes, and that's what they call it, the Book of Invasions and the Book of Leinster. There were battles that were going on with other groups of people, with the Tuatha De Danann. Well, when you read the battles, they talk about these ancient sites with force fields around them, and they were trying to breach the force field. It literally reads like that, Jimmy. This stuff reads like science fiction, but it's like historical accounts.
When they say from the west, do you think they were referring to maybe the western side of Ireland, or do you actually think west?
I actually talk a little bit in the book. I don't go heavy into it. I have also wrote a paper on the mysterious origins of metallurgy, and another one, the origins of cartography and the mystery of cartography as well. And I like to do like little scientific papers. 1 second, Jimmy. Choking here. When I had looked into the cartography, I'm looking at ancient maps all around the world. I'm fascinating with ancient cartography, and we do have a sunken landmass off the coast of Ireland. Now, what the Gaelic accounts that I referred to talk about them coming from the west, basically that could be the Western Seas, or how far out to the west you want to go with that. I personally like to think of. Well, there's an ancient map, okay, and the Piri Reis map. You've got various maps, Arinthius Phineas. There's all sorts of maps going back to deep antiquity, and on a variety of maps, you will see a mythical island called Hy Brazil, Hy Brazil. Some people think it comes from the clan Brazil. Brazil is another. It's an Irish name. Brazil meaning of the clan Brazil, and this mythical island of Hy Brazil is sometimes referred to as the other Atlantis. And it's ironic that, where this is shown on the map is off the western, about 100 miles off the coast, or Galway or Cork, on the western island of Ireland. You will find there's a geological sandbank known as Porcupine Bank. You can look at this on the Rockwall Trench in Google Earth. You will see the sandbank there. And it's shown at about 20 miles in diameter. It would have been an island above the water at one point in our epoch. It's shown in the exact same location as these ancient maps showing Hy Brazil. So,
well, why would you say? Because why would you say mythical? Because I don't think. I mean your own personal belief. Do you think Hy Brasil was there? Or
I'm putting three threads of evidence together there. I'm putting the mythological evidence of them coming from the West. Mythological stroke history. It's a person's viewpoint or perspective. I sometimes refer to mythological history. It's probably a better way of politically correctly saying it and then offending nobody.
Okay.
But mythologically, these guys coming from the West, you have geological data proving that there was an island there at one point not too far into our past, maybe as recent as 7000 BC. And then you also have ancient maps, not just one, various maps showing Hy Brasil as an island about the size of Greater London, about 20 miles in diameter, exactly in the location of the geological sandbank. So we have three strong pieces of evidence there, Jimmy. Now, here's the thing. When you come from the Western Ocean, the Atlantic, from the West and hit Western Europe, you're going to hit two major landing bays, Sligo Bay in the west of Ireland and the Gulf of Morbihan in the northwest of Brittany. And they are the two megalithic hotspots, the megalithic theme parks, Jimmy, where all this stuff is located. Sligo alone has something like 5,000 plus megalithic sites. Yeah, this is how incredibly rich Sligo is.
Why do you think? I have to ask you this directly. There's two things I got to get in here really quick. But Hy Brasil, to me, we spend so much time on Atlantis, books on books on books on books. I'm going back to Plato. But why isn't there a genuine Hy Brasil expedition study? Why? I don't get it.
They actually, in the 18th century, they sent out people from the city of Bristol in the UK looking for Hy Brasil, thinking it was still there, But it's like, there's nothing to see anymore. Go home. In our modern age, you've got two camps. You've got alternative history, alternative research, and a new paradigm that's not waiting around on anybody. And it's alternative researchers like myself and great others out there doing stuff. And then you've got mainstream academia that has got blind blinkers on, doesn't want to look at anything, nothing to see, go home.
Right.
It's terrible times we're living in one respect, incredibly interesting also.
Well, that's true. In the 18th century, though, we were still looking for El Dorado,
William Gladstone, the Prime Minister of England, at the time of Ignatius Donnelly's book, Atlantis, wrote him a letter and thanked him for his book, on Atlantis, and found it incredibly interesting, incredibly fruitful. And Ignatius Donnelly, being an Irishman, a very proud Irishman, wrote him back a very eloquent letter as well.
Somebody wants me to ask you. I feel like I keep cutting you off. You sound
not at all.
Okay. Please, because I don't mean to. Says this is from Rick. He says, ask James about is it Baylor, the evil eye of the Fomorians?
Baylor, yeah. I'm not up to date on the mythologies too much. I'm not aware of Baylor, the evil eye of the Fomorians, but I'm gonna look this one up.
It sounds like a Led Zeppelin song. Okay.
I know some of the stuff is really strange. I know it is. I mean, I've read through it a little bit. I'm more into the Tuatha De Danann and their link with the people of the mounds. We on Halloween we call the Banshee the woman of the mounds. She's this incredibly ugly creature. It still survives in their mythology today, living mythology, if you want to call it that. But I'm not familiar with the Fomorians too much. I just know the groups of people. I should say that there is the genetic links. They talk about the King of Spain in ancient times, that they were linked with Ireland as well, and there is DNA evidence linking us with a haploid group that comes from Spain as well. The Basque people in Spain seems to be genetically linked with the people of northwest and northeast Ireland, which are an unusual demographic in themselves. They got larger craniums than the largest craniums of anyone in Europe. Does that make us smarter? I don't know. I'm not professing to say that. But there are very large craniums of people here in Northern Ireland. So there seems to be some sort of a genetic link with Spain as well, and the Milesians as well, that the Milesians came from Spain, another one of these groups around the time of the Fomorians, the Firbolg, and the Numidians, and the Tuatha De Danann.
Well, I find it interesting, the reference to the West, because it leaves it's completely wide open. If they're going to say East, Well, okay, that can go all the way to China for that matter, you know, and the connections are there and they're obvious. But from the West, and it seems, again, deliberate, what could the reference be to? You know, and I don't want to reach out to Atlantis and suspect that, but that could be a possibility as well. I think High Brazil is a good shot, but if you go further west, what could possibly be there?
I don't think that the megalithic builders came from just High Brazil only. I don't think High Brazil was the Atlantis, by the way. I just think it was one incredibly interesting fact that I came across, and it could have been one. Look at the stuff in the Azores underneath on Google Earth. You know, there's stuff buried all across the Atlantic. I think, you know, Atlantis was many colonies and outposts and all sorts of stuff going on. And I think we had an ancient global maritime culture. That's the reason I really studied the ancient cartography and some of these maps. You know, I also came across this incredibly interesting artifact. Let me throw this one. This is a wild one. That you can date the Piri Reis map to 3775 BC. Let me tell you why. Because it's centered on the Tropic of Cancer at Ceyhan, basically at modern-day Aswan. And the last time the Tropic of Cancer was there, it migrates at a known rate per year. I think it's 1 second or 1 arc minute. I think it's something like 40 years, something like that. But you can add up all those 40 years and you can push it back to date and time. The last time the Tropic of Cancer was at Ceyhan in Aswan in Egypt. And that's where the center of projection that Charles Hapgood, who worked with the naval cartography section, American military, and so we have all this data coded in the map. When you draw a map, it's a highly sophisticated thing. So somebody who drew the Piri Reis map had the center of projection on Aswan in Egypt. You know, so that Piri Reis map is linked with Egypt somehow. If you wanted to invade a country like Russia or China or something, you would put your center of projection on your target, whether that's Beijing or, you know, whatever, Iraq or something like that. That's why you would do a center of projection. Our center of projection for the world map now is Greenwich Mean Time in London. Mm-hmm. So that's why the importance of the center of projection is incredibly important. So whoever drew the Piri Reis map had a center of projection on Aswan and Egypt. Now in 3070-75 BC, who was traversing the globe that we know about, drawing the coastline of South America and North America and islands that are now sunken, and it's like the mind just boggles. However, you know, that then begs the difference of, you know, how did they have the science to put it into cartography? And people talk about this clock mechanism that you need to do to map longitude, and then you can't measure longitude without an accurate clockwork mechanism. So therefore, it employs high technology. However, there is another device called a Tanawa that has surfaced in research, and this Tanawa is basically like a pendulum that measures your angle to the moon. And if you were able to have intensive moon calculations, just like the megalithic builders did, by the way, Jimmy, okay, you could measure your angle to the moon, and once you were able to track the moon, sophisticated and knew the moon cycle, well, then you could use that as instead of longitude to know your position on the globe. And that then begs the difference. You know, it's just something I find incredibly interesting that these megalithic builders were able to traverse Ireland, Britain, Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, all the Western European coastline. They're everywhere across Western Europe. They're not just Ireland and Britain. You know, they're all dotted along Minorca, the islands of Majorca, Malta, top of North Africa, southern.
Well, possibly the tip of South America too, as well. You have to throw that in the mix. And to complete the Piri Reis map, then somebody's either going across Panama, dragging a boat across the isthmus, or they're circumnavigating Cape Horn down in South America. And that's the only way that map could have been drawn. And that's the fascinating part. And so, back to your point.
Well, I think there was an ancient global maritime civilization. And that could have been, you know, still primitive in concept without, like, okay, marine chronometer is basically a clockwork mechanism that doesn't need a pendulum to swing. Because if you can't put a pendulum on a boat, it's not going to work. So you need something like a marine chronometer to actually know your date and time. So if you know your time, well, then you can map speed is equal to distance over time. You know, you can measure yourself with formulas and know your position of longitude or relative longitude. And that's what the Piri Reis map encodes. But there is another method, and that's what I explained. It's Tanoa. If you just open your mindset and realize that, there are many ways to look at two sides of the same coin. There's many ways to do things, just because we had the marine chronometer, to map longitude doesn't mean that's how other civilizations in the past did it, and this is why I researched ancient cartography, and I come across it now, and I wrote the paper on that. Because I do think that there was an ancient global maritime civilization. I follow the work of Charles Hapgood, the Ancient Sea Kings, and a credible work. I think the guy, didn't get the recognition for his day, and even Albert Einstein backed his work as well. Like, this guy was a genius. So,
well, I think so. How do you fill in the gap then? And what is your theory on this? There's obviously in some extreme high intelligence that was occurring before 3200 BC. You don't just go and A, create maps like that, B, create the pyramid, or C, or the pyramids in Giza, Newgrange. These cavemen is what populated the earth at that time. We barely had farming. We didn't have anything. So how is it possible to have the technology to create maps, longitude and latitude, and know what the stars and the moon were doing at that time when that intelligence wasn't? How do you explain that?
I go further again, Jimmy. Look at the cave paintings in France, in Lascaux, Perche-Merle, and the Ardennes region, and these paintings that they drew of buffalo boicing in mid-run. Basically, they were showing animal characteristics. They were drawing like the shoulders of the buffalo onto protruding rocks, so it looked like the natural shoulder of the buffalo was protruding from the rock. They drew horses running and galloping, extremely artistic expression. Pablo Picasso came out of these caves and went, "We haven't learned anything about art, we've just rediscovered it." Mm-hmm. It's a bit sarky, but that's what he said. But also you have the Pleiades represented there for the first time. You have the Summer Triangle represented there, and they're drawing astronomical calculations. These things are dated 27 BC, 17,000 BC, 32,000 BC. So how far do you want to go back? They also have acoustics in natural acoustics in caves, obviously. And what they were doing was drawing their artistic subject matter in really, really awkward locations, Jimmy, so that they would have to lie on their back and crawl down a crevice to paint something, or else get up really high into a corner to paint something. Because when you look at the subject now, for example, like a hand or a buffalo or whatever it was they were drawing, it mimics the sound of the echo only at that location where the artist found. So if you find a hand on the wall, you can clap your hand and hear the echo of hands clapping. Or if you make another sound, it comes back like a herd of running buffalo, and that's where you find the buffalo. So the subject matter, the artistic representation of what they were drawing in extremely strange locations in a dark cave are representing, the acoustic effect. So how far do you want to go back with this stuff?
Well, are you suggesting then, where did the knowledge go? Did it go away? I mean, I understand if you're talking 32,000 years ago, and the cave paintings are brilliant, and I agree with you. When you look at those are 3D. They're 3D. They're not 2D. And we were supposed to not have any knowledge of art or anything. The art, and Picasso was right, that art that is there is true fine art. It's artistic expression is what is on those cave paintings. But why did the knowledge die away, and where we went into 5,000-6,000 years of dark ages?
Well, did it die away? I mean, we had an ice age in 12,000 years ago, 10,000 BC. Probably wiped a lot of us out. I mean, you also have Göbekli Tepe built at the time of the ice age. You also have Karahunj and Met Samor in Turkey, a megalithic and metallurgical complex. And I wrote in the origins of metallurgy in my paper on that. I looked at this megalithic complex that has a metallurgical complex built into the megalithic complex, and the metallurgical stuff's gone back to 7,000 BC. Karahunj in Armenia is 7,000 BC. So there are, and there's still 2,000 years of gaps, but that's only because what's left, Jimmy. There are places there. Göbekli Tepe, 10,000, years old.
Well, it could be 14,000, yeah.
14,000. Karahunj going back 7,000. There are places.
Have you been to Karahunj? I can't believe you just said it. Have you been there?
No, and I tell you what, somebody sent me a copy of Paris Harouni's book, an Armenian guy. extremely, it's out of print, hard to get. He sent me a copy and he says, I want you to go and research this place. He actually sent me a copy of the book. I would love to go. I'm actually talking to a couple of guys. Hugh Newman from Megalithomania might go. I might go with you. Andy Collins is, I don't know if I think Andy Collins has been or not. I think Andrew and Andy wants to go. I might go with them if I get a chance. I think it's incredibly interesting because what's unusual about Carahunge is these holes drilled in the stone.
Bingo.
This is the one that's really attracting me because these holes are, I don't think it's been properly done. And I have a lot of research on it in front of me here, not too far from my left-hand side here, with Paris Harouni's work. I just think it could be modernized and brought up to date and more done on it. It's extremely hard to get to, though. It's like
it is, and not only that, there's almost no research on it at all, and good for the Armenians in that they largely ignored Armenia. It's so old. It's one of the oldest civilizations in the world, and here Carahunge is sitting up there. For everybody out there, if you don't know anything about Carahunge means Stonehenge in Armenian, and so these stone megalithic structures that are out there, it looks like Stonehenge, not quite. I mean, in its layout, but there are holes in the rocks that line up with stars, astrologically, and it is an extraordinary sight. Extraordinary. And and for the Armenian people, they get the last laugh on this one. No matter what we have in the world, they have Carahunge.
I got 3 dates in time, Jimmy: 10,000 BC, 7,000 BC, and 3,000 BC. Give or take a couple hundred years, but these are 3 incredibly important dates. 10,000 BC because of the Ice Age, because of Göbekli Tepe, all sorts going on then. Then you also have 7,000 BC. You have Metsamor in Turkey, Armenia, and strange things going on around that region. Stuff popping up, starting to appear. And then 3,000 BC, you have an explosion of stuff on the globe, Jimmy. Obviously, there is stuff coming up in 4,000 BC like Malta, but in that 1,000-year period, you see there's a peak in civilization. It's like it's been reignited again. You have the megalithic civilization of Europe. You have the Indus Valley. You have Egypt, China. You have Mexico, South America, North America as well. You've got stuff just exploding in pockets, all, not supposed to be linked in any way. But I think there was an ancient global maritime civilization that, transferred knowledge around the globe. I like to go down that route first. I like to go down the global maritime culture. I'm open to all sorts, though, Jimmy. The more you look, I'm open to an ancient alien hypothesis. I'm not denouncing that in any way. I just think there could be that and a global maritime culture. Who knows? It's so complex. The more we look back now, the more we're learning. We're only scratching the surface, Jimmy.
I definitely feel Göbekli Tepe is the game changer for us all. Mm-hmm. And there's just no doubt about it. Göbekli Tepe wasn't nothing was supposed to exist before 3000 BC.
Did you ever see the obsidian artifact found nearby Göbekli Tepe?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the bracelet I'm talking about.
Yes.
That is so sophisticated. I look at obsidian artifacts. To carve an obsidian is crazy. I studied Sumerian culture, Jimmy, and I looked at the engineering enigmas of Sumerian seals, and that they carved in obsidian, they carved in hematite, carved in any type of crystal or rock they wanted to. In dense granites, scale of 8 or 9 on the Mohs scale, and I've studied it from an engineering and a scientific perspective, and I came across that obsidian artifact, and it's like, that just indicates high culture.
Well, you know what? And I don't want to come off trivial. I don't want to come off cavalier in what I'm about to say, but at Göbekli Tepe. Let's just say it's 12,000 years old, 10,000 BC, 12,000 years old. Let's give them that. Don't go back to 15,000. We don't know for sure, but let's just say 12,000 years old, 10,000 BC. The one fascinating thing there that is beyond the obsidian artifact and everything else, it's that belt buckle on that one stone. Do you hear me? That belt buckle says metallurgy. That's what that says. That says intelligence. That says a belt holding somebody's pants up, or robe clothes. That
Textile
shows
clothing.
all of that, and fashion. Like, can we go there? You know, and it's that belt buckle. Everything, yeah. Everything else at Göbekli Tepe, fascinating. Oh, the 3D reliefs and that one cougar and all of that is great. With the fact that it's built like it is with those columns and how they did it with the amount of people, and so they obviously had farming, they had culture, they had leaders, they had a religion, all of that, a government, they had everything there. But that belt buckle is the game changer. That says that throws off every history book in every library on planet Earth, and that to me is the game changer.
You know, just let's go off the rails on a few ancient stuff. I was in Egypt recently, Jimmy, and I documented a lot of it. I have it on my YouTube channel, Capricorn TV1 on YouTube, and I went there with an agenda to look at ancient machining, ancient artifacts. I had Chris Dunn educate me a bit before I went. I missed the tour with Chris Dunn that year, and I ended up going the next year without him. But I knew what to be looking for, and you know, I documented some of these boxes in the Serapeum in Egypt, and I'm talking some sophisticated, advanced machining. The best example I have on this planet is the Serapeum in Egypt at Saqqara, and these boxes. Crystal, it's all over YouTube anyway, but I mean, Brian Force will have some stuff on it too there, but I got to see them firsthand, Jimmy. You can see your reflection in the polished pink and black granite. The boxes are weighing 70 to 100 tons. The lid is carved out of the same base as the box, and they were shipped, the granite was shipped from 500 miles from the south. The boxes are perfectly parallel lengthways and widthways internally, right angled corners, no internal radius, a perfectly right rectangular corner to within 1,000th of an inch. I cannot explain it as an engineer.
Well, yeah, and you know, and they want to say it was done with chicken bones, you know, and
I even have it. I even have the crude hieroglyphs scratched into it on one of my videos on YouTube. And Yusuf there, I just got to mention Yusuf Aouyan from Chematology, who brought me there and gave me insight. You know, I got so much insight into what I'm doing and what I'm about and ancient machining. That's why I was there. I had been to the Petrie Museum in London just before I went, and I had a look at the drill cores, these ancient machining drill cores. They were drilling granite at an unprecedented speed, like almost ultrasonic speed, into like pink granites, and you can see the spiral grooves on these drill cores. And I was looking at the holes of the artifacts that they drilled in Egypt. So I had the drill cores in London that they brought back, and then I have the holes that they came from on site in Egypt. You know, so these guys were machining and drilling out granite boxes. What their true function was, I don't know. But there's an acoustic effect in Egypt too. I got to chant inside the granite box inside the Great Pyramid. Egypt was empty when I was there, Jimmy. And I was there to look at the acoustics this time on an acoustics research trip, because again, Egypt's no different to the megaliths. These guys have an astronomical knowledge, they have an acoustics knowledge second to none, you know. And some of the best example of acoustics on the planet, archaeoacoustics, is that Egypt. We have about 10 minutes left, and you've hung out past. You know, thank you. We're running out of time, so I'm going to bang this out to you really quick. Sure. I want to talk. We didn't even talk about Malibu tonight. I don't know how we didn't. Yes,
I know. So we're going to talk about Malibu. I want a 2-minute rapid fire response from you on my favorite megalithic structures. Number 1, Tiwanaku. Give me 15 seconds. What do you think?
Tiwanaku, the perfectly parallel grooves with the holes drilled internally inside that. You know, it's almost like these things were done on a CNC milling machine.
Yep.
That's all I can say on that. It's extremely high technology. Also, at the latitude that it's at and the height, it's above the tree line, how they move them into place. And I like the work of Arthur Poznansky, archaeoastronomer, who's dated the place to about 17,000 BC, probably more accurately about 12,000 BC now. But the work of Arthur Poznansky, Polish engineer, phenomenal. You know, he can archaeoastronomy date that site religiously to, you know, at least the Ice Age. Of course, there's Ice Age animals there as well. carved on the back of the Tiwanaku Gate of the Sun. So
the statue of Ramses at Luxor.
When you look at the mathematical form and the analysis of that, you take a transparency of that and you overlay it reverse, it's perfectly symmetrical. You know, it had to be machined. I'm looking at that as an engineer, Jimmy. That is machined all day long. I don't care what Egyptologists tell me. That thing is machined to a high degree of perfection. Even with our modern machines, I don't even know if you can get it that good.
And it's 100 tons. And when you have to stop and think about this, they didn't have mirrors or anything like that. So for to carve one side, you can't see the other side to match it. You'd have to run around. Do you understand? The only way for that kind of for it to be that symmetrical, that perfect, I agree with you. There's some high technology there.
Let me just expand on the CNC. CNC means computer numerical controlled CNC. In other words, there's a machine controlling the machine to do that. I must stress that you need a machine to control the machine to carve something like that in our modern age. So
Yes. Somebody just tweeted, Brad. He says, "Jimmy, didn't you know ancient chickens had titanium bones?" Oh, well done. Your view of the Great Pyramid of Giza. My take is I think it was there way. I think it's way old, 15,000 years old. I think it was there.
Real Jimmy, let me just say this. It's perfectly aligned to true north to within 3/60ths of a degree, or basically 1/20th, but 3/60ths of a degree. And the Greenwich Mean Time is 9/60ths of a degree. It's 3 times more accurately aligned to true north than Greenwich Mean Time Observatory that we did with lasers. Okay. Now, the thing is, if it's going back to a deep epoch like that, I'm open to that in terms of precession or knowledge. Maybe the base that it sits on was. However, like Newgrange and the sunbeam coming in, the alignment of true north would be out because of the motions of the earth. There's a thing called the precession of the equinox, the wobble of the earth is basically, or is it the wobble of their solar system? However, there is also another wobble in the earth called the Chandler wobble, which is a 41,000-year wobble. This would all affect true north, and that would not be as accurately aligned, Jimmy, over a long period. So I'm kind of open to that being not too old, but I do think the base that it sits on that Giza plateau with the Sphinx could be about 10,000.
I'm with you on that. But my whole thing is that I cannot get my brain to accept the fact that suddenly in 3000 BC, the Egyptians, the upper and lower kingdoms, and the first dynasty forms, and suddenly they go from barely learning how to light a fire to building the Giza complex. And I don't buy it for a sec. I just don't see that type of knowledge just landing unless some flying saucers were involved.
Just saying the Giza pyramid, I'm not saying it was built in 3000 BC. I'm saying it's probably not any deepness, not maybe 10 or 20,000 BC. I mean, some people put crazy dates on it. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be 3000. It could be 4, 5, 6. I don't think it's extremely deep in antiquity. I don't agree with they're pulling figures out of hats for 3000 BC anyway.
Sure. Okay, a couple more really quick. We already talked about Göbekli Tepe. Oh yeah. Stonehenge, is it all that?
Is it all? Wow, we didn't even get into the acoustics of Stonehenge. I mean, again, I don't know if you're aware of the acoustics of Stonehenge, Jimmy, but I mean, I think it's more acoustically interesting than the astronomy. I mean, there's solar, lunar stuff going on there. It was built over a 1,000-year period at least. There is other stuff on the site of Stonehenge, maybe dated to 10,000 BC. These post holes. This site could be ancient. It's an incredibly interesting site in terms of its latitude and longitude with ley lines. It's also the acoustics that I mentioned. Going back to the novel Tessa de D'Urberville's in the late 18th century, they talked about it having a deep rumbling acoustic sound in the novel. Like, it was known then, because when the wind blows and the thundery winds and stuff like that, it acoustically makes sound. And the reason is that internal horseshoe is like a parabolic sonic ear that reflects sound. And the internal part of the U-shaped ring of stones are perfectly smooth and flat, and the outside of them are roughly hewn. They're rough on the outside and smooth on the inner face. And that was an acoustic design function for that. Dr. Rupert Till and Dr. David Keaton, two PhD researchers from Reading University and another one in Northern England, have both done separate research into the acoustics of Stonehenge. Again, another megalithic acoustic anomaly. And well, basically, there's a perimeter that you can walk around the outskirts of Stonehenge, as exact radius. You can walk around in the perimeter of a circle, that you will have an acoustic enhancement. Basically, you actually walk away further from Stonehenge and you'll have an acoustic enhancement, or an amplification, basically. It goes from periods of loud to periods of quiet, and periods of loud and periods of quietness at a certain radius. Constructive and destructive interference, basically. It's a schoolboy physics. It's not very complex. You can draw an acoustic map of Stonehenge from its standing stones, from a sound source, without even going there. And you could draw it acoustically what would happen, and you will find the measurements of that. There's an actual acoustic replica. There's in Maryhill, Stonehenge in Washington State. There's a full-scale replica of Stonehenge done by an American road builder, and the acoustic tests were done there to complete it, because it's fully complete with concrete replica of Stonehenge. So that's how we know this evidence of the acoustic stuff there. Incredibly interesting, though, the acoustics as much as the astronomy.
What we've got about 5 minutes left, if you don't mind.
Keep going on the round table.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. With all of, when you walk around, you've seen everything that there is to see as far as megalithic stuff and lost civilizations and on this earth. I'll ask you, when you saw the Malibu discovery, what was your first thoughts?
First thoughts, I was like, I didn't know. I was looking at this thing and going, what is this? What is this? Is it a continental shelf? Is it man-made? It looks like a floating roof, suspended, and a dark cavern underneath it. I wanted to see it from different angles, and when I had seen enough of the footage, I was just watching the footage come in, and when you see it on your video, Jimmy, it's awesome. I love stuff on Google Earth. I'm on Google Earth all the time. I found stuff on the Kazakhstan pentagram, which nobody seems to have realized yet. I could do a show on that. It's incredibly insane. I'm looking at stuff in the Azores Plateau, so I know what it's like to get into Google Earth and look at stuff under the water as well. I do think it's an incredible anomaly. And when on its own, I'm not sure. And I think Jason said this as well. I agree totally with Jason Martell at the start of the show. I was listening just before I came on. I was aware of the Malibu stuff, that the underwater submersibles, this USO stuff going on. And there's been many documentaries cover this, and I was aware of that. So when you put it with that, Jimmy, if this was any other location on the globe, Jimmy, it would be, okay, it's interesting, highly anomalous, but when you put it in the exact location that it's at, it's just begging people to get out. It's insane. It actually looks like a floating shelf. It looks like a man-made roof. It's incredibly big. What's underneath it? I mean, it looks like a cavern or some sort of an underwater base, basically. It does. I was slow to accept it. I was actually, to be honest, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, I'm resisting here. Okay, I'm holding on here. When you see it from another angle, and I'm like, this is in the UFO hotspot where they're talking about stuff going into the water. What a place for this thing to be.
Does it remind you of anything in all of your travels? Is there another culture does it look familiar to you? Have you scratched your head going, hey, I've seen this somewhere before?
Yeah, it looks like the roof of a football stadium, one of these concave roofs. These supporting curved roofs of football stadiums, these 80,000 seaters now. No, it does, it looks like this kind of dome shape, maybe flat, slightly curved dome. how that would be built underwater. Was it built there and then sea level? I mean, I'm not sure about the sea levels and the time that thing would be. If it was, it would have to be many thousands of years ago, Jim, before that was above water. But it does look to be like a floating shelf. It looks to be something underneath this roof. And why would that be? I mean, I'd love to get a submersible down there and go in and have a look. Definitely. Will you meet the American Navy when you go in there?
Well, that is the question of the day. I was on Clyde Lewis's show, Ground Zero, on Monday night, and he said, "So Jimmy, what's the best outcome, or some question like that? What's the best case scenario in this?" I said, "You know what? Going out there and getting arrested." That's what getting stopped. Certainly we want to. Yeah, well,
discovery, Jimmy. It's a monster discovery.
We need to get cameras down there. We need to videotape, and that would be the ultimate thing. Let's find out what it is. But short of that, is having the government step in and say that we can't, and like Area 51, to block us from. And why are you hiding this? And I think that would be the other significant thing. I agree with you. It looks like the top of an entrance. It looks like the shelf. It's supported by pillars. Those are the obvious things. But when you look at it, it looks like a garage door. It looks like an airplane hangar. It looks like.
Like a garage door that's sitting opened and sitting supported, like, and opened up.
There was no question the first time that I saw it. When you tie in the location with Malibu and the significance of the sightings that have been going, I get all of that. But when you just look at it, if I was doing flashcards with somebody, maybe
it doesn't look natural. It does not look natural. The one striking thing you can say about it, it does not look natural. That's a definite.
I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. Now, look, check this out, James. I've got, I should just read all of this, the compliments for tonight, but you've got to have him back on the show. Please let us know when he's coming back on. The show is ending too early. You need to extend by an hour. Tell him he's an awesome guest. Just on and on and on and on. So
awesome dialogue, Jimmy. I know you know your stuff as well. And great dialogue. This is my type of show. I love. Just roll the information out as fast as you can. There's so much of it in my little brain. I just love to share my knowledge, Jimmy. That's why I do what I do. I'm in pursuit of knowledge for me, but I don't want it to be just in my head. I want to get it out there too. I want to share my knowledge. That's why I do my own show, Capricorn Radio. I want to just get some knowledge out there, and I learn from guests on my show, and I'm going on guests, and I like to regurgitate some stuff too. But it's a journey of discovery for me in this world, Jimmy, and I love doing what I do, and I thank you for the time on the show. It's been a pleasure being here, Jimmy. It really has.
Well, you make it easy for a guy like me because I'm terribly interested in the subject, and I'm trying to get as much out of you as I can for everybody else, and so they can learn through the two of us and to be a sponge. But you just make it easy, and it's fun when it's easy, and we have another 50 subjects we never even got into, and I look forward to the next time coming out. Now, what are you speaking anywhere public? Do you have anything going on?
I'm all over the place at the moment. I'm meeting Klaus Donner next week. I'm going to Klaus Donner in Austria. I'm going to do a Capricorn TV interview there. It's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. I do something like, I'm doing 100 shows a year, Jimmy, and I read a book for every show. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to publish 2 articles a month at the moment, and I'm putting them into the Intrepid mag. I've got a book I'm finishing, and then I'm doing the Capricorn TV stuff while I travel backwards and forwards to London. If I'm in London, I'm going to do some trips to Spain to take some interviews. And Capricorn TV is just my YouTube channel. It's going to be a YouTube TV program. I'm going to interview people, and then I'm going to go to ancient sites and like Egypt and stuff and get some stuff documented with tours and stuff as well. And I'm just going to go around in a few different ways, Jimmy. And I'm exploring my brain, and I'm trying to make it digestible and presentable to the public as well. And I just love doing what I'm doing, because it's still the same thing to me. I'm still a systems analyst anomalist. I'm just applying it to history, and I'm applying it to megaliths, and I'm applying it to anomalies. And it's like, same writing about history and engineering and science, and putting everything I have and I've done in my life into one genre, one idea, whether that's radio, conferences, or radio, TV stuff, or books. It doesn't really matter to me. It's all the same thing to me. It's just different ways of interacting with the public. And there's a few people do that, there's a few radio hosts that are authors as well. And, I actually got dragged into radio by accident, Jimmy, and it's consumed my life now. I met some other authors, and they said you should do a podcast. The podcast went to live. The live got picked up by 6 radio networks in the end, and that's why I'm on Dark Matter as well, Capricorn Radio and Dark Matter Network. And I'm glad to be here as well on the network as well. It's great for me, and I'm going to try and take a little bit of a slower pace with the radio. I keep saying that to everybody, but I just need to get some articles published, and it's very time consuming. And I work 16 hours a day, Jimmy, doing all the things I love to do. So it's not like work to me.
Look, you can stop Capricorn, and then when you and go ahead and go and write. But when you need to get your radio yayas out, just come on my show. That's all you got to do. James,
thank you, dude.
Hey, it was a great pleasure, and I'll be in touch over the weekend. Tell Klaus that Klaus is the man. By the way, that guy. About once a week, I'll pull up a Klaus documentary and get my education on. That's a frightening. He has connected the dots. He really has.
Well, he's been on the show a few times, and he's working with the guys in the Australia on the Gosford glyphs and whatever about the Gosford glyph. There's a star map there that I'm working on in archaeoastronomy for some research, and I love what Klaus does. He's a great guy, and he's very tenacious in what he's doing, and he's brought a lot of interesting knowledge to the world. So I'm looking forward to it. It's just an opportunistic thing I don't normally travel that far for TV interviews. I'm trying to do everybody when they're in and out of London, and I go to London twice a month, so I'm trying to do that. Actually, Patricia Corey, you mentioned on your show, I'm hopefully meeting Patricia at the end of July for a Capricorn TV interview. It was funny you mentioned Patricia.
I cannot wait. She's on Friday, and
tune in for that one, Jimmy. That's an awesome guest there.
You know what? And she doesn't get out too often here on radio here in the United States, and having her reach out to the United States audience, they're gonna freak out. They have no idea what she's about to bring to the table on Friday. And I'm glad you said that.
I don't even know how I fell in with Patricia. I think I booked her on the show by accident because she came through one of the publishers, and then we never did the radio show, and we've been trying to get it. I said, you know what, Patricia, I want to do a TV interview because you're in London now and again. So whenever she's in and out of London, I'm just not happen to be there. So I think we're going to be there at the end of July. It's going to work out. And I've got about 5 or 6 people to do for July of... I've got Andy Collins coming on to talk about his work, and I've got Hugh Newman coming on for Capricorn TV. I've got Ken O'Keefe, great guy, and Patricia Corey. I've got about 15 people lined up on the books for Capricorn TV. So, I wish I could do 1 or 2 a week, but I can't. I have to be opportunistic when I'm doing it. But can't wait to do an interview with Patricia. She's incredibly interesting.
Hey, James, I'm rolling credits. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Well, you might as well hang for 2 more seconds. Tomorrow night, Carrie Cassidy. Friday, Patricia Corey. Stay tuned. Coming up next is the Arizona UFO Show with Rich Giordano. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder, Mark D. Kovar. Music is Doug Aldrich. Show intro performed by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and this is James Swagger. Say good night, James.
Yeah, good night, everybody. Thank you for listening.
I'll talk to you. I'll be in touch over the weekend. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow night.
Wow.